Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kaysen.
This is it.
Game's over.
We finished the game. This is a long game.
It's a very long game. I don't think we should do another podcast series that goes quite this.
I think by the end of this, it'll
long.
be 5 months. It'll be right at 20. I think this is episode 20, so 5 months. 5 months of episodes. We're going to have one more after this.
It's a bunch.
We're going to do one more sort of like
answering
recap,
questions,
interacting with audience questions, having guests
Patreon
on.
questions.
Yes.
And Subscribe Star specifically.
Yeah, so we already put those out
Yeah.
a few weeks back because we're a few weeks ahead. But
And
in
then,
any case...
and then the Perfect Works, right?
Perfect Works, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the homework for next time, is to read Perfect Works.
Do your homework.
So read Perfect Works because we're going to kind of go through that.
We're going to be pissed if you don't do your homework.
We're going to fill in any of the gaps, answer questions that people are still confused about with the story,
Yeah.
like what about this? This doesn't make sense. Why this? Why that? Those types of things. That'll be the last episode next week, and then we will also announce
on to the next game.
Yeah, we'll announce next time what
Yeah.
the next game will be, and that will continue the week after that.
But the polls are open now.
Polls are open
on
now.
Patreon and Subscribe Star.
People are voting as we speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that out of the way, there was one thing that because we kind of really skipped quickly through
The
that
Lacan
last
stuff,
part.
right?
Well, mostly the part where they were attacking the Merkava,
Oh, okay.
or the Merkava, and like their whole plan
Yeah.
and everything like that.
Yes, we did.
It's not so much that part that I want to talk about. I think that the pertinent thing to talk about here is that Deus, like what I guess like at the core of what I'm trying to point out with this, is that Deus' plan seems to be changing somewhat.
Okay.
Like, if you remember, I think I brought it up last time that Ellie, when she fuses back with Miang again, she turns back into the purple-haired woman.
Yeah.
She mentions how they have to destroy the remnants of humanity that did not transform into Wells or Seraph Angels, right? And they ask why. Like, why do you have to do that? And she's like, I don't really know.
I don't know.
It's just part of the program,
Yeah.
right? I just know I have to do that. There's some evidence here that Kraulian not only like made up for some of the deficiencies that Deus failed in terms of, like we talked about how they transformed into Wells, but like they were supposed to be Seraph Angels. It wasn't until Kraulian like bypassed and like used his nanomachines to like actually fulfill the resurrection of God that it could actually be done, right?
Yeah.
There's some evidence too here towards the end of the game that as Kraulian begins to learn more about the nature of God and everything, that like he's part of kind of like changing the plan of what's going on. He's sort of shifting what he's doing too.
Right.
And Deus is kind of doing the same thing. So let me see here. So Citan, in that conversation where they're talking about their plans on attacking Merkava, they're sort of contemplating the behavior of Deus. And Citan makes another reference to what Kraulian had talked about with like the true Miang, right? The Great Mother. And notes that the non-mutated people, the people who did not transform, and how they were meant to be destroyed are now being taken in as well. Like, it's not being destroyed like they had originally talked about. They're trying to take everybody in now.
Okay.
Which was apparently a contradiction, right, to what had been said before. So there's some interesting stuff there. I'm going to be putting this on screen so you guys see what Citan's saying. But the important thing to point out about this, that the reason I don't want to just like skip as quickly as we did through that conversation, because that is an important detail to take away. Deus' behavior is not consistent with what it had said before, or what Ellie had said before that it wanted or that it was doing. And we're going to find out that Krallian is the one who's kind of like adjusting things
Right.
as we're getting towards the end of the game here. So that's one important detail to take away from that scene, and I didn't want to just rush through that into the next part. Okay, now that that's been said, we left off basically right where Disc 2 turns around and starts playing more like Disc 1 again. You can go back to the
Yes.
world map,
And you can actually fly around and go places.
fly around and explore. You can do side quests. There's quite a few things to do. Like basically where we left off, all there is left to do in the story is go do the final dungeon.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of little things to do that I think are worth pointing out. And there's a lot of good dialogue in what's now called Snowfield Hideout. But it's
Yeah.
basically Shavat having crashed into like the southern pole, basically.
Right.
So it's like a snow-capped,
It's Hoth.
a snow-capped
Looks pretty Hothy.
little like continent. Oh, but the whole world map has changed quite a bit. Like there's new continents, and continents have been broken apart,
Yeah,
and lots
yeah.
of islands. And I would assume that's because Merkava is going around on this rampage destroying
Just breaking
just
things.
scorched earth, MFer, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like the whole planet's like structure
Yeah.
has been changed,
Everything's
basically.
changing, yeah.
But anyways, this is something I don't even remember if it was really like said in any of their little narrations while they're sitting in chairs. Like it's never really talked about that
That
Shavat was
everything's-
shot out of the sky.
Yeah, that was so strange.
But
you,
it is.
You get it, and especially as you're going around through the tunnels, like things are broken and there's pieces of stuff just kind of lying all around. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a lot of kind of little secret places
Yeah.
to go within Shavat if you can go behind like some of the stores and stuff, and
Yeah.
it looks really cool. You'd think you're going somewhere important, and then it's like boom, there's a
Yeah,
little
like
item,
dead end.
and you come
Yeah,
back,
item.
but it's almost as if they designed this whole thing, but they couldn't really use it, but they wanted to use it for something, but they couldn't put it
Yeah.
into the full game, and so they're like, okay, you just can go out here and then get an item and come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
There's a lot of good dialogue here before leaving this place, though. And one thing that I took a note of that I thought was really, really impressive, despite the extremely rushed nature of all of the exposition and the story on Disc 2 and the lack of gameplay in it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just how it's kind of just like breezing through stuff,
Yeah.
they still manage, in my opinion, to wrap up every single subplot in a satisfying way. It's
Yeah, I wouldn't
crazy.
say that I was unsatisfied with basically any portion of the whole
It's
game.
like almost any subplot I can think of, whether it's like Ramses bent on revenge against Faye, or Dan's revenge plot against
Yeah.
Faye, or like
Well, Rico, though.
Rico, I guess, is the one.
Rico would be the
major
one.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
I love Margie and Bart.
Yeah.
And Margie's like, so, oh gosh, I can't even remember what she
think I
says,
have
but
it. I have it written
some
down
little innuendo type thing about their
So she
future.
says, "Young master, you better not die. Promise me." And he says, "Of course I'm not going to die. Quit saying such weird stuff." And she says, "Sorry, yeah, you're right. You'll make it back. When you come back, I'm going to, well, I just thought maybe we could be closer, you know?" And he's like, "Hey, whoa, quit it. Do you know what you're saying?" She's like, "Hey, just kidding, young
Yeah,
master.
she's like, "Just kidding."
You're all panicked." Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Even with just little things like that, they're
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of wrapping it all up. And I think they do a really good job with that with several of these stories.
I think they did. For an unfinished game to wrap things up like this is
Yeah.
it's impressive. Yeah.
So I particularly liked, we talked about it a little bit last time with Dan, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I really hated Dan at the beginning of the game. Anytime he came around, I didn't.
Right.
It's like I felt like he was ruining the story. But then every time he's come around in this portion of the
Mm-hmm.
story, it's actually been really good.
Yeah, the last probably 3 interactions that we've
Yeah.
had have been more positive. He's sort of coming to grips.
So
with
he
things.
realized, seeing
Yeah.
Faye frozen in carbonate, first of all, this is not okay. Like, I
Right.
don't care what he did. This is not
Right.
justified, which is something I think is fitting for a kid to have a turn
Right. As
of
opposed
heart
to an adult.
as opposed to an adult.
Yeah.
So we talked about that last time. But also he realized that it wasn't Faye's fault. Even though Faye takes
Right.
responsibility, we had that whole
Which is
discussion
good,
last
which is
time,
important.
right?
but
Yes.
it's still not technically
But
his
Dan
fault.
realizes there was a monster inside of Faye, and he's conflicted now about,
Yeah.
do I forgive and forget? Like, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
And I love the conversation we have here. Dan says, in the prison, when I saw you change into a monster, I understood everything. Living inside of you, Faye, there is a monster that's not you. He's the bad one. He's to blame. So to forgive you or not to forgive you, well, that's not the problem. It's not like it's going to turn things back the way they were, but it's just, I don't know how to say it properly, but I'm sorry. And he's really struggling. But he apologizes
Yeah.
to Faye, right? And then Faye says, it's all right, Dan. Enough already. I understand. It's my fault. I'm sorry I caused you such pain. And then Dan doesn't have a response to that. And Faye says, I'm just glad that I could finally make peace with you. Take care, kiddo. And that it kind of ends on that note. So Dan can't bring himself to like fully forgive, but he does apologize to Faye for not being more understanding. And Faye continues to take responsibility, which I think is really important.
Very important.
But it's just a really nice sort of like resolution, tying the bow on that little story, and I think it's well done.
No, me too. Also, just the general theme there of inside of you is a monster, but he still takes responsibility for the monster, but inside of him is a monster. There's some truth to that with everybody, with all of people, just in general.
Yep.
And there is, everyone's got the shadow, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes well-done characters seem more well-done, I guess. Like the most well-done type of writing that you can do, character-wise, is to have a character that's really dynamic, but in both positive and negative ways. And if you look at like Harry Potter, he's got like part of Voldemort is like inside of him, right? The shadow of Harry is Voldemort.
Right.
The shadow of Luke Skywalker was Darth Vader, and that's why he saw himself when in the episode 5 when he's in the dark cave in Dagobah. And also with Frodo, right? Frodo, by the end of the journey, Frodo can't do it. He can't do it because there's this thing in him that's he will literally become a monster if it wasn't for Gollum and Sam, right?
Yeah.
Because he not only had he been stabbed at Weathertop, which is going to plague him forever, but the ring had just corrupted him, and it just resembled this part of him that was being brought out in this negative way. And those are like some really good characters, I think, some good character moments.
Yeah.
And this game has that specifically with Faye, in large measure, possibly more than any other game. He's got like a crazy monster that he's trying to keep down, but that makes you respect him even more. So I think it's really good character writing. Just thematically, to have that a part of the story.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And Midori is in there as well.
Oh, yeah,
you can
she's
talk to
there.
her a little bit, and if you
She
picked up,
starts talking now, so that's interesting.
she's talking normally. So there's a couple things I wanted to talk about with this. First of all, if you picked up her ring from way back in the beginning of the game in Lahan, it was hidden. It's a hidden item out in like the bushes outside of the little house.
Oh, okay. I don't think it did.
If you had picked that up, you can give it to her, and she'll give you a Hercules ring back
cool.
as a gift or whatever. There are other ways to get Hercules rings. I think what Hercules rings do is they increase the amount of experience you get in battle. And that's only really important for Faye because Faye has to get to level 80 to get his last death blow.
Oh, yeah.
And at this point, even with like a fair amount of grinding for death blows and things that I had done, and for money and things like that I had done in the game, I still was only like level 75 by the time I got to the final boss.
Okay. Yeah.
So you'd have to do a lot of grinding, I feel, because I did all the side quests. There was nothing else left to do in the game, and I was level 75. So if you want to get to level 80 and see Faye's last death blow, you just got to go fight a bunch of freaking
for a few
enemies.
hours.
And those Hercules rings can help with that. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was some of this stuff we've been kind of pointing out along the way about Primera, Jesse's daughter, and Midori, who, to me, both seem to have some kind of telepathic or empathic abilities, some sort of extrasensory ability to know what people are thinking and feeling, and that they both spent significant amounts of time just being very quiet and not talking. And just kind of the whole motif of the game, which is about these overseers or managers trying to bring humanity to a point where they would be ready to join with God again. And the parallels here to the novel Childhood's End, which if you've read it, you'll see those right away.
Yeah.
So again, I think everyone should read that novel after having played Xenogears, just to understand like the inspiration for the game if you really like it. But one of the things one of the reasons I was pointing that out along the way is because there is a similarity between these girls, this like latest generation of these overseen or managed generations of humans getting to the right point where they can join with God again, right?
Yes.
With them having
Yes.
these kinds of extrasensory abilities and not speaking. There's a direct parallel there, I feel, with Childhood's End.
Okay.
So read Childhood's End. Let that be a hook for you to go check it out because it's a really good book. I like it a lot. And also, like we said, Krelian, whose name should be Karelin, was a character directly lifted, or the name at least, directly lifted from Childhood's End. Okay. There's also a really great scene that you get with Queen Zephyr. Did you find her?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So you kind of go outside and up like a little tower in the snow.
Yes, that was pretty cool.
She's standing up there. And I don't think I saw that on my first playthrough of the game. I don't think I went and talked to her. Because I remember feeling like, what happened with Ramses? It just kind of like, last time we saw him, he killed Miang, and then I never heard from him again. And I was like, what happened with that?
Right.
It's optional. You got to go talk to Zephyr to see it, but there's a great scene there where she kind of brings up, oh, how's that man doing that you brought back from Deus or whatever, or the Merkava. And you have a scene with Seitan, like talking some sense into Ramses. He's feeling down on himself.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
worthless.
is Sigurd there too, right?
Yeah, Sigurd's also there.
Oh, and so are the four.
Yeah, I really like that reveal.
The girls. Yeah.
So
behind the
there's
curtain.
like, they have a camera angle kind of in the
Yes.
in
They've
the corner
done a
looking
reveal
down.
with those curtains at the beds several times in this game, but it's surprising every time.
It's true.
Yeah.
So the camera's kind of in a corner, and you just see Sigurd and Seitan and Ramses, and there's kind of a curtain blocking where they're standing. But Seitan, like, strikes him, like, to the ground.
Yes,
Like, stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Right.
You are not trash. Nobody thinks that, especially not them. And then the camera pans over and
you
shows
see all
that
the
they're
girls.
there. Do you see how loyal they are to you? It has nothing to do with your competency or your merit. It has everything to do with who you are in your heart, the kindness that you showed them. That's what they cared about. That's why they like you. That's why they want to help you. That's why we want to help you. Like, enough with this like garbage and trash and stuff. Like, stop, right? He kind of like is giving us some tough love there.
Yeah.
But Ramses does come around.
He comes around. And I think Seitan says something along the lines of, oh, can we count on him to help us in the final battle?
Yeah.
And Seitan was like, well, I don't know what he's going to do there, but at the very least, he's not against us anymore.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, fair enough. And I actually don't remember if Ramses shows up.
I don't think so.
Okay. But it's like the possibility that he would show up and fight on our side was something they were discussing. That was interesting.
Yeah, so I really like that.
Yeah, I actually really liked Ramses' character by the end. That was like one of the better done characters.
He's one of the best characters in the game.
Yeah.
For sure.
Very well done.
Zephyr and Faye go on to have a conversation after this about like the importance of what he calls true freedom, right? So she's going to talk about like, are you going to, like what if we can't break Zohar's influence over Ellie or whatever? Like what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, well, I'm going to believe till the end that I can save her from this.
Yes.
But if not, like, I'm prepared for that too, kind of a
Right.
thing. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes is more or less what he's saying. And she's trying to say, like, you don't have to do this. Like, your opponent, your enemy here is the person you love. If you decide to quit, no one's going to blame you. And he says, to quit would be meaningless. All that I have fought for and all that I live for would come to have no meaning at all. People should be free. And this becomes a really big philosophical contention right at the end between Krelian and
Oh,
Faye.
yeah.
Right at the end. But this is
In
kind of
their
where they first plant
conscious.
that this is what Faye's really after here, right? People should be free, with no one bound by others and no one binding others. This is a part of me that desires that freedom and a part of me that gives me hope. So I shall fight to win true freedom. For we are still alive. We fight to live. That is the reason why I fight. It's proof I'm human. So, I think he also says, I promised my father and myself too that I would free Ellie from Deus binds, that I would save her. And she says, I understand. Let's keep believing and hope for a miracle. So that kind of wraps up that scene. There's some other cool things you can do here in the crashed Shavat. I took note of a couple things that just gave the place a lot of personality, that kind of brought a smile to my face. So there's one room with like a bunch of cats in it. Like 10 cats like roaming around, and there's just some women and stuff in there, and a little girl. And you talk to them, and they're like, the little girl would not give up till we rescued all these cats. We had to like save the cats. And the little girl's like, oh, I love these cats so much.
That's hilarious.
So like that was
like
good.
that stuff.
But then you go further into the next room, and there's it's like a meeting room, like a conference room, and you have like soldiers from Ave and soldiers from Kislev
no, I do
and
actually
elders of
remember this.
Shavat.
Yeah.
Kind of like around like a table discussing like important strategy. But there's all these women and children running around, and so they're doing their little, meeting, and it's like, oh, be quiet, like we're trying to do something important here. And the women are like, don't be hard on the kids. This is the warmest room in the place. Like, where do you want them to go? And it just, I liked that flavor.
That's
because it's like they're in a really bad situation. It's really helpless. But there's something really sweet about that too, that they have all of their wives and their families, and they're trying to survive and get by.
Yeah.
And the kids are still playing and running around, but they're trying to like do important strategy, and it's like, it's just relatable.
That's how I imagine life would be in a bomb shelter or in a nuclear fallout shelter, where it's like 2 rooms. One of them's basically a storeroom. You got a bunch of adults. They have adult stuff to do, but there's kids there, and what do? You can't kick them out. You
Can't do anything about it.
You just got to work around them.
Yeah, and there's something very relatable about that.
Yeah, that's fun.
That I really liked. So there's lots of cool stuff like that. And then Hans is in here, one of the dolphin guys, right?
Oh yeah,
The one from
both
the
of them were
Thames.
there, right? Hans and Franz.
I don't remember talking to Franz. Maybe he was there and I missed him. But Hans has a family now.
Okay.
He has like a wife and
Okay.
like a stepson, and the stepson doesn't like him. He's like, my dad.
Yes.
And he like runs away. And so he married this woman after like the Thames and was destroyed and all this destruction that's happened.
Yeah.
She lost her husband, so she was a widow. And he kind of took her and her family, and the son is struggling to accept him as the father.
As his dolphin father.
He explains all of this. And then he starts reminiscing about the captain.
Yes, this was so funny. I loved this part.
He's like, so good.
I almost can hear it now, the captain walking down those steps and saying, hey, we got an adventure. I've got a new treasure chest that I found, and we're going to go get it.
Yeah.
And you see the ghost of the captain walk down. And we're like, what happened to the captain? He's like, oh, he stayed with the ship.
Sunk with the ship.
Yep, he stayed down because captains do that.
Yep.
But then he's like there, and he's like, hey.
He says word for
word. I got a new treasure. Who's with me? And it's so funny. Was it Hans or Franz? Which one's the one?
Hans was the one.
Okay, and then Hans, runs up, and he's so excited. He's like, oh my gosh, this is great. But he doesn't end up going with him, right?
Well, I think at least for now he's got responsibilities, so he's got to figure out.
It's funny
how
though
he's gonna...
because it's like, oh, if only the captain would come down, and the captain's there, and he's like, oh, well, but still, I can't do it. I can't do anything. But it's great that you're here, Captain.
He starts throwing doubt on the plan, which was kind of what his role was on the Thames. He was always like second guessing the captain before.
Yeah.
And so he kind of starts doing that again, possibly because he's a man with responsibilities and he's trying to find a way out of it. But the captain calls him out. He's like, see, you're just doing what you always do.
You're doing what you always do.
You're always worrying about things that like you don't need to worry about. That's why your son doesn't like you.
That's great.
Anyways, I also took down this line because you can talk to the captain on the way out as he's kind of standing there with some other people.
Yeah, I feel like I did.
I felt like what he says here was actually kind of profound in like a meta sense for the process of writing this game. Like for a guy like Takahashi who wrote such an ambitious, like just giant, enormous universe full
Yeah.
of lore and tried to make like we're talking about with the introns and stuff, like
Yes.
detailed explanations for how
biological, yeah.
biologically this would
Yeah.
work. Someone who's that in the weeds of the details of the world,
Yeah.
right? And trying to explain it all and make it all make sense and make it work. I can relate to that in some way, as like you can get really bogged down on, does everything make sense?
Right.
I need to make sure everything makes perfect sense and it all comes together, or else it's going to ruin the illusion. And what the captain says here is, what? How did I survive? Don't worry about those minor details. If you worry about such things, then kids will hate you, just like they hate Hans.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
And I was
I
like,
don't think
dude,
I understood that immediately.
I am obviously
That's
don't
so
know
funny.
this, right? I'm
Hey.
speculating.
You might be right.
But it feels to me like someone might have given Takahashi that kind of
Yeah.
advice.
Someone like Hironobu Sakaguchi,
Or maybe,
someone like that.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, why are you so worried about all the details?
Yeah,
Kids
kids
who are
will
going to
hate
play
you.
this game
Yeah.
are going to hate you if all you do is bog them down in their anime, shonen anime video game about details like
Exactly.
that. Don't worry about it, right? And I think that I don't know, I just really, really liked that. It was really funny. It was like a perfect captain line. And yeah, it kind of struck me as being one of those things that maybe was a little more meta than it might seem.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's pretty much all I took down for the Shavat section here, the snowfield hideout.
Okay. Yeah,
there
I was
anything
actually
else?
surprised when I left that you are able to kind of just go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much for Shavat, but yeah, it was nice. I was like, oh my gosh, I was wondering if I was ever going to be able to traverse this world in the airship ever again, or if there was only that brief time at the end of Disc 1 and then that was it.
Yeah.
But you can, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing you can do there is you can get, so Seiton's gear, Fenrir, you can get its sword.
Oh yeah,
Upgraded.
You go to a guy in
Yeah.
a secret place, and he kind of upgrades it for you.
Yeah, and I think that's like the ultimate weapon for his gear.
It was Shinrai that turned into Jinrai, or what was it?
It was Kishin that could turn
Kishin
into
became Kijin.
Yeah.
Ki means gold, Shin means God.
So there's a few things that you can do now. There is like you can go to where Melchior lives, Tara Melchior lives, and he'll give you some like equipment.
Yeah,
I
in the
think
forest.
like a goddess robe or something else like that. So you can talk to him briefly. You can go to another Zeboim ruins area in the
Yes,
lighthouse.
at the lighthouse, yeah.
And this is where you get more information about the Zeboim era. And it doesn't fill it in quite as thoroughly as like Perfect Works does. There's like a lot more to the story than what you get. But you do get some background on Big Joe, finally. He's not just like
Yes.
a silly guy.
He was down there, yeah.
Yeah, he's down there, and you can get a couple books that sort of like detail his past, which I'll just read some stuff from the wiki on that. But more importantly, you get more about Kim and Ellie from that era, and Emeralda and all of that. So there's a couple of different places where you can read like reports, or there's like a little video you can play where it talks a little bit about Miang from that time period. And how she was like manipulating from behind the shadows, just like she is now, with the prime minister of that time. And there was a war between Zeboim and this like other organization. It was like an anti-government organization called Ravine. So there's kind of a war going on between them. But most importantly, there was a genetic defect in humans during this time period where they were struggling. Like tons of people couldn't bear children anymore. So there was a problem with like fertility. There was a genetic defect, so like this was being passed on, and a lot of people were exhibiting this.
Yeah, there was a thing. We actually
Because Ellie
we
has
see this. Yeah, we see this in the Zeboim Ellie. Yeah.
Yeah, because like
She can't.
so they're celebrating like a Christmas time or something like that.
It seems
They're
like
having
it.
having a dinner.
Yeah.
It's funny that they celebrate Christmas in this world that is totally unrelated to Earth, but okay. Anyways, unless, I don't know, maybe like some of those traditions were carried on in the freaking Raziel's tree or something like that, and maybe Cain and Abel decided to keep the
Continue
tradition.
it
But
and just
why?
tell the story, right?
Unless you're Christian, I don't know why you would celebrate Christmas. Anyways, minor detail, who cares? The important thing is that during their dinner, I think that Kim is complaining about the
he's
war.
really upset.
He's really mad because,
Yeah.
specifically because, Ravine, the anti-government rebel faction, right, the terrorist group that is fighting against Zeboim, they bombed like a central power reactor in Zeboim that turned off the power in his hospital where he works. And there was a girl that died. One of his patients died because they lost power because of that terrorist attack. And so he's just furious because even though what Ravine is fighting for against Zeboim might be like just the ideology at its core might be noble, they might be fighting for freedom or whatever it might be, he's talking about how it's all so stupid, so foolish to justify this.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's hurting people. And so he's going on about that. And Ellie tries to counterpoint some of this stuff. She talks about how she feels sorry for the child, but I don't think people in Ravine destroyed the generator with the intention of killing her, right?
This was Final Fantasy VII, by the way.
Yeah.
This was basically the
That's
Avalanche group,
Yeah.
like that exact story. And he's like, even if you're trying to help out the environment or the world,
Yeah.
you can't blow up a thing. What about the people who died?
Yep.
And all that kind of
The
stuff.
innocent people who suffer because of it.
Yeah, that was
So
interesting.
she said they just don't know a good way to express themselves or any other way to express themselves. The government is the one to blame. And he says, is that a good enough reason for that child or those dead people? It wasn't much of an operation. It was difficult, but there was enough chance to win. We'd have won. He says we'd. It almost makes it seem like he's part of Ravine at this time, which I don't know if that's true yet. But I'll explain that in a second. We'd have won
Like,
if
I know
we'd had
nothing
better
about Kim.
equipment. So I'm guessing he's talking about Ravine, and he's probably joined with them at this point, but we'd have won if we had better equipment. That child would have been saved if there was electricity. It's not just that child. 5 people died in my hospital. The ICU didn't function. And then he kind of goes on to talking about what fools people are and everything. And Ellie starts to kind of bow her head, and she's, feeling kind of put down by all this because she says, am I a fool too? I had a physical at the hospital today. They said I can't have children because of hereditary genetic damage. I can't create life. Am I a creature waiting to become extinct? Am I also a fool? Because he had been going on about people are just waiting to be extinct, all this stuff.
Yeah,
or rushing to extinction.
He was on a tirade, yeah.
Rushing to extinction while the war.
Right.
So he is looking for a way to fix this genetic defect. And this is clarified more in Perfect Works, which we will read for next week. But Miang is at the point of deciding here to annihilate the human race and start over. We touched on this very briefly last time, that there have been extinction cycles because she's looking for the right state of humanity to be worthy or ready to join with God again.
Yeah, and that's like her job. Yeah.
Right? So that's her whole job. This genetic defect means that human beings are not ready. They're defective. They can't join with God yet. So she feels like she needs to start over with like a fresh human race. And but she's waiting on the results of Kim's research to see if the nanotechnology can cover over or fix this problem. But he ends up joining with Ravine instead of the government by the end of this. And so he's actually in a Ravine research facility in that room where Ellie was shot, and he's looking through the glass.
Oh, that makes sense.
And
that's
it's
the reason why the government was showing up.
The government Zeboim soldiers who are coming in to claim.
Very clear.
It's not at all.
Okay, I didn't get that at all. But
this is all explained in Perfect Works.
Okay,
which we will read later.
I like how he mentioned specifically talking about Emeralda. He's like, we had to do such and such at the molecular level. No, the atomic level.
Yeah.
Because talking about the difference that
that Krellian was struggling with.
Krellian was not able to figure out. He was able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the molecular level; it was the atomic level, and that's what Krellian knew, but he couldn't.
Because they had to get into those introns, right? Mm-hmm. Anyways, after you've seen that scene, you have to have Esmeralda with you in the party, I think, to see this. But Esmeralda
I had her in sit down, I think.
I think then realizes, oh, you're not actually Kim, right?
Right.
You are the many, many generations descendant and you carry his memories. I can accept this now. They died a long time ago.
Well, Faye mentioned, he says, I think the memory that I just got is for you.
Yeah.
That I was meant to see this so that I could tell you.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of goes through. And he was, what was it? Something along the lines of, I think Kim just wanted like one last hug from you or something like that.
Yeah.
A warm embrace.
Yeah.
And so she goes up and hugs Faye. And then this is the funniest thing, because she steps back and she's like, well, like, I'm going to be strong and by myself now, and you're not Kim, so I don't need to be a child to you. So she just becomes an adult.
She just
transforms
into an adult form.
And she's a big Esmeralda now. And she's like, I can take care of myself now.
I guess that's...
It was cool. I actually liked it story-wise. It was actually really touching and interesting. And she's like, anyways, it was very good for her. It's just funny. It's just funny how it happened.
Yeah, I guess, like... The more I think about this, the more it's like, how would a nanomachine colony represent itself as it like discovers its identity, right? So it has the disposition of a child from the time we recover it.
Because she can't speak well.
Yeah, the childlike attachment to Kim and Ellie needing a parental figure like that. Not being willing to accept that they died a long time ago. These types of things, childlike, I guess, disposition, right?
Right.
But as its mind matures, it doesn't have a body like ours that, through biological processes, grows. She just decided, I'm going to be more mature now. I've learned a lesson. My mind has grown, and I will represent myself now as a more adult form, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way you could
for the rest of the game
describe how a nanomachine colony would
do that, other than the question of mass, which is where does the extra material come from?
Can the nanomachines reproduce? Or that seems to be because they
behave like normal cells more or less, right?
Yeah.
So there's a biological component. They just have
something
in it, and so I suppose.
Because, I mean, they repair damage. I would think that would not only, that would include, like, actually growing tissue or something like that, right? But, anyways, I don't know. I'm not a molecular biologist. I've stated this many times on the podcast now. Who knows how nanotechnology...
You're not!
Nanotechnology is basically like magic anyways. So.
Yeah, it basically is.
Anyways, after you've seen that scene, you can go back to Lahan Village. Not to the village itself, but up the mountain path to Saitan's house. And remember that music box from the very beginning of the game when he brought Faye in and and it kind of opens up.
Oh, I didn't go there.
So you can go back there, and on the side of the music box is a message. And you have to have Esmeralda with you, I think, to see it.
Dude, yeah, I didn't.
But it says, "Celebrating my daughter's birth, may all the dreams, courage, and love in the world be yours." So that was a message from Kim, and a present from Kim to Esmeralda, that music box.
Okay, I remember there was a cake somewhere, right? Because Esmeralda talks at some point about seeing white with candles on top of it.
Oh, I don't remember that.
This was a while ago. It could be that I read it in the script. I'm pretty sure it was in the game, though.
I believe you, I just don't remember.
And she says, oh, I saw a white with fire on top. I figured that was a cake.
Oh.
It could very well have been a cake, but there was also this thing.
Yeah,
so this was
a music
gift
box
for her.
Was a gift that Kim gave to Esmeralda.
Well, now I'm trying to remember what that box was, because
it was just it played.
It didn't work.
A little theme.
It was a bad omen.
It's playing that theme.
It had the angel on the tree and the sun and the moon on each side.
and it's a little angel in the center that sort of spins around.
It turns, yeah.
And it plays that little melody.
And then it just breaks.
And what Seitan, remember, what Seitan says to Faye is like, or Faye's like, oh, this music, this feels like there's another person inside of me.
Yeah, and I
who,
kept
like,
thinking, see, because I had no idea how this
responds
game
to
worked.
this music, right?
I would have gone back there if I had made the connection that had anything to do with Kim, because I didn't freaking know who Kim was. Oh my gosh, that's actually really cool, because I was assuming it would have been Lacan or Id or something like that. But instead it's like, it's like way further back.
Kim, the second advent of the contact.
Okay, yeah, that's
that
pretty
was
cool.
Kim's memory kind of stirring in Faye as he listened to that music in the music box.
Interesting.
So, pretty good stuff. A little, Easter egg that they hid there back at Seitan's house.
Yeah, very cool.
There's also
there was a birthday of sorts for Esmeralda that she has some memory of, but that she doesn't have any memory of Ellie though. So it would have been just Kim and Esmeralda for like one day before everything went wrong.
Yeah. So there's another side quest you can do. There's like this desert where it's like a bunch of dune men are out there, and you go through, and there's like an old like dragon skeleton with a sword in it, and you can climb up there and get that sword. It's a Yamata sword, and it's like Seitan on foot's most powerful weapon.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple other treasures you can get up there. So like there's that whole thing you can do too, if you care to do it. I think aside from that, that's about it in terms of things.
Seitan's new sword, by the way, is spelled differently in the English
versus Japanese. The one we were talking about back at Japan. The Kishin or Kijin.
The Kijin. This was saying it's a Kishin Ken is how it would have been pronounced in the Japanese, which means machine god sword. Which I'm trying to figure out how that works actually, but either way, he's got his typical sword, and then this is the machine god sword. Now, I don't know how perfectly accurate this is, but it sounds
like Xenogears to me.
It's a kanji I've never seen before, but according to the translate tool, it says machine god sword. So
sounds pretty dope.
That's pretty sweet. But I didn't know there's another sword even more powerful, because that sword is pretty good.
Yeah. So that's about it for side quests and little things you can do around the world at this time. Basically, the last thing to do is to go to the final dungeon and beat the game. This is possibly my least favorite final dungeon in the history of video games.
Now, what did you think of when you drop into the hole and it's like turning?
That's cool.
While you go, that's
like
one of
that.
the only notes. I said falling through the place to get to Deus was super cool, but also crazy and maybe not necessary for an unfinished game to have done something like that.
It's like,
that was fun.
It's a little Star Fox-like.
So you're talking about like the maze thing and moving all the platforms?
The maze nature
yeah.
of that final dungeon is so confusing.
It felt like it was just to make it take longer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everything looks the same. Every hallway, every
and every pivot point and all the bridges.
What the fetch, dude? Like, the best way to handle that dungeon is to never change your orientation on the compass.
Oh, sure.
You have to remember where you're pointing, and like that's
and just
north.
Leave it there.
And I've been this way, or I have not been this way.
Yeah.
And you got to go up between the levels. So like there's like 2 levels to everything. My goodness, is it annoying to try to figure this out?
That was
because you don't even know necessarily where you're trying to get. You pull up the map and there's a red node amongst a bunch of other nodes, and that might give you that's probably where I'm supposed to go.
Right.
But it's not like the characters pointed out like that's where we need to go. In fact, I think there is a shot, now that I remember it, where it does kind of like the camera does kind of pan over, but there's just like every freaking bridge and
as
column,
soon as you're doing things,
and it all looks exactly the freaking same.
It does. It does.
There's nothing distinct visually about anything, and so it's so hard to know what is what and what's important.
That's the problem with the future.
Yeah.
At least as presented, in movies and games and stuff. It's like everything looks the same. It's this weird colory thing.
Sterile,
shiny.
Metallic.
Yeah, metallic.
Just like indistinct designs everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it's very hard to figure out.
Yeah, welcome to the
Luckily,
future.
I took meticulous notes the first time I played the game. So that
really?
anytime I come back here,
You're
I
like,
have
"Hey,
my
go
own
here."
set of instructions.
Yeah.
Do this, go down this elevator, go south one node, go
my
up the
gosh.
elevator, go
That's
southeast to one node, jump up and activate the thing, go down the elevator.
Go back. That's
It's
funny.
like it's step by step, so I will never have to figure that out again.
Yeah.
When you know what you're doing, it's actually not that long of a dungeon. You can beat it in maybe 30 minutes or something like that. So it's, as far as final dungeons go, it's not like the longest, but it can feel very long.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I don't know what to freaking do in here.
Yeah, it's disorienting.
I don't know where I'm going. I don't get it. And anyways, not my favorite final dungeon.
But then you hop down the hole,
Yes.
and it's freaking the Return of the Jedi with the Millennium Falcon. You're just going around. I swear, was it Shadows of the Empire had a
Yeah.
mission like that where you're
Uh-huh.
dodging things as it goes and it's like rotating?
Yep.
Yeah.
It does.
Now, just as it is, it wouldn't be too difficult, but you have to guess at where it will be when it rotates, and that's
Yeah.
freaking annoying.
And the
'Cause
camera
thing's
spins.
rotating. Yeah, but you're like not. Anyways,
Yes.
it's crazy.
So
that
it's
was
kind of
just
fun.
But it
But
was
then
fun.
we
I
get-
thought it looked pretty cool. You
we
do
get-
that twice.
Yeah. You get one more descent past the angelic figures.
Yes, where it once again shows that you're the flame in between the two.
Yep. I think
Pretty
it's
cool.
actually just exactly the same one we've already come down to before. It's the
I
same
think so.
room.
Because it's the blue projection and all
Yeah.
that. In fact, a lot of the enemies we're fighting are they're laserish, light-looking.
Yeah, they're almost holographic looking.
Yeah.
There's a transparency to them.
Yeah. It's
Similar.
Very,
That's a good point.
interesting. I don't know what that is, but
Anyways, you go into that room where Deus was, where the Ellie's crucifixion scene happened. You jump down there, and you get into the Deus core. And the Deus core is surrounded by 4 orbs of light going around it.
And they kind of give you the choice. They're like,
Yeah.
how do you want to do it?
You can either use fuel and try to take out the orbs, which will make the Deus boss battle less powerful.
Yeah.
He'll like lose abilities or lose maximum health or a couple of other things. He'll just be weaker.
Yeah.
And you'll have to expend fuel in the attempt to do that, and you'll have less fuel for the final battle. Or you can go straight to it and reserve your fuel, but the boss will be harder.
Yeah. I did the 4 things.
You took
first.
them all out?
And they're really cool battles. It's just like a symbol on the ground.
Yeah. The one
Like
of them, yeah.
a gold symbol. Yeah, really cool. I thought it was really cool. And the way it would attack and move. And
Yeah.
really abstract with that kind of stuff.
I actually, on this playthrough, just went straight for
really?
Deus and just fought it. Because
Do you recommend that? I mean,
it
the
depends on
the
your
satellite
equipment
battles
setup.
aren't too difficult.
Depends totally on your equipment setup.
The whole dungeon was actually pretty easy.
At this point in the game, I had bought all of that stupidly expensive equipment from Big Joe back in Zeboim.
Oh, yes,
Oh, I
yeah.
forgot to do that, by the way. I'll do that in a second. I'll go back and talk about Big Joe's backstory.
Oh, yeah.
I bought all of that stupidly expensive equipment, so my gears were absolute beasts at this point.
Yeah, me
So
too.
I just fought Deus final form, and I beat it in 4 rounds. So it's not really that hard anyways.
Well, I'd say this whole ending was not difficult.
Yeah.
The way the game ends, and I was expecting it to be a little
I mean,
more
the game generally
But it
is a
wasn't.
pretty easy game. There's
There's
one or
a few,
two
like, really hard-
bosses that are
Yeah.
tough, but for the most part, it's an easier RPG. I mean, Square games typically were. They weren't known as like the really, really hard
the really
RPGs,
complicated
right?
ones, yeah.
But this is where we come into kind of a lot. This is going to be the bulk of what the podcast is about, is breaking down the ending here, because there's a heck of a lot of stuff that happens. So when you kill Deus, Deus core kind of shuts down, and all of their gears shut
Yes.
down too.
Except technically Phase.
Yes, and that's
He
only
could still move
because
'cause he made contact.
contacted
Yeah,
the wave
they mentioned
existence. So the Xenogears still has power because of the contact has the power of the wave existence in him. So his gear still works. All the other gears are shut down because the Zohar was what was powering all the gears in the world to begin with.
Okay, yeah.
So they can't move. But then all of a sudden, Deus core comes back online. And again, this is because the wave existence is still trapped in the Zohar. So it's an
Yeah.
infinite energy source, right? But it's basically, Citan is talking about how there's a level of energy there that is strong enough to destroy the whole planet.
Yeah.
And there's basically nothing they can do. If it explodes, if it detonates, like, they're all dead. We're screwed. This is it. This is the end kind of thing. But then it starts to shoot out into the atmosphere.
Well, you hear this like
Yeah.
sound, and it's as though something's like punching it away.
And
at first, it seemed like they were like, "Oh no, is Deus? There's activity with Deus. Deus is moving again." I'm like, "Oh
Yeah.
great, we're gonna have to kill freaking Deus like 15 times." I thought that last boss battle was too easy.
yeah.
But it turns out it was actually Ellie waking up within Deus, right?
Yep.
And using the power to like bat the thing
Get it away
from the planet.
so that it would save the planet. She's self-sacrificing again.
Because it would kill her. Yeah.
Because it's going to detonate and she'll die because she's in it.
Yeah.
But it'll save everyone else. This is the anti-type's self-sacrificing
Yes.
personality once again
It's what
emerging.
she does. Yeah.
And they're just like, no, like we can't let her do that.
But they can't move. They're,
Yeah.
they're literally stuck. So Faye's the only one that can move.
And
I don't know how they get out, by the way, but somehow they got out.
They're like, Citan puts, he lays out some arbitrary rule here. You won't have enough energy to get back if you go after it.
Yes, of course.
I don't know how he knows that. I don't even know why that's true, because the Xenogears is powered by the wave existence itself. But whatever.
Whatever.
They're
Okay.
trying to raise the stakes here.
Right.
If Faye goes after Ellie, he's probably not going to be able to come back.
He'll be stuck
and
in outer
Bart's like,
space.
I'm not letting you do it unless you promise me you'll come back. And he's like, yes, okay, fine, I'll promise. And then he
like, "I don't
takes
come
off.
back." Yeah.
I think the idea there is more not making a promise that you will come back, more like a promise that you won't give up.
Right.
Like,
sure.
I've been told it's impossible for me to return, so I'm going there with the intention of not coming back,
Yes.
versus I'm making a promise that I will do everything I can to come back, right? I'm not just going to give up when I get there. Because he was just thinking, she's going to self-sacrifice. I don't want her to be alone. I'm going to go there to be, so that someone can be with her when she dies, right? So she doesn't have at least to be alone. Because that was her whole thing, is when she would talk to him, is about knowing how lonely it can be, right?
Yeah.
And not wanting to be alone. That's kind of a big fear of hers. And so he just wants to be with her in that sacrifice. And so Bart's like, no, that's not good enough. You have to actually try to come back.
That's fair enough. That's
I
good.
see it that way.
Yeah,
more.
sure. I like that interpretation, actually. I like that.
So Faye takes off into the atmosphere, and it has this pretty, like Deus is there, and it has this kind of cool wormhole effect that they go into.
Yeah, once it explodes, basically.
Yeah.
Because you get into it, and he approaches her, and then it's like, and it's just like crazy.
And you end up in kind of that like space of like water on the floor where you met
Like
the wave
ripples
existence.
coming out, yeah.
And everybody's naked here. And I think that the purpose of this is, it's a more abstract thing, like, right? Because I think Krellian even says something here like, well, like the wave existence, even back when we found the wave existence the first time, I am your perception of me, basically, right? So this is like your mind trying to make sense of this.
So we're inside of our
place.
own mind, basically.
It's just their naked consciousness.
Yeah.
Right? These aren't their bodies.
Although Krellian still got his little headband.
Yeah, it's true.
How do you work that one?
Well, again, maybe this is just Faye's perception of Krellian's consciousness. It's
So-
like his mind giving form to Krellian's consciousness. He's kind of perceiving it
Fair.
in his own way.
Fine. So in Faye's consciousness, naked Krellian keeps that headband on.
I think the reason that they're naked is just because it's their naked consciousness.
It's the pure self. I understand
Yeah,
that. I understand.
yeah,
There's a
exactly.
good symbolism there, and it's like everything's laid bare. Like they're facing each other, the true selves, right?
Yes.
He's really talking to Krellian, not Krellian's persona,
Yes.
not who Krellian is wanting to be or pretending to be, but they're seeing each other's true selves and having an
Right.
honest conversation. And I think the nakedness is symbolic there.
Yeah. And so, let's see here. I have all the dialogue pulled up for this ending scene, and I think it's probably good to go through some of this like line by line to kind of like work out what is Xenogears really all about here, right? Like what is this game? Because this is where it's all kind of brought together. Thematically it is. So Faye kind of wakes up in this space. He's like, where am I? Oh, that's Ellie. This must mean that I'm inside of Deus. And then there's a human face that sort of appears in the place,
vague shape of a face.
in the place where the wave existence was the first time he was here. And it says, not exactly. Your actual body is but a physical object. It has merely been absorbed into Deus' outer shell. Only your consciousness is here. So there's the direct, confirmation that these are not their bodies. This is just their spirit, their consciousness, their will, whatever you want to call it. Of course, the girl you perceive in front of you is not a true being. Your consciousness is merely creating her image. So Faye is sort of creating the images. His mind is trying to make sense of this fifth dimensional realm, right, of the wave existence, just this world of waves and things like that. So Faye says, the wave existence? No, that's not you. Who are you? It can't be. Is that you, Krellian? That's right, isn't it, Krellian? It was you who did this to Ellie. And Krellian says, the path of Sephiroth has been connected. No one can stop God from returning to his world now. Well, so what have you come here for, Lacan? Yeah. What were you going to say?
Nothing. Just the idea that the path of Sephiroth is all within the mind anyways.
Yeah.
So how this is all happening is through, I'm guessing, through the fact that Sephiroth was connected by the God. Anyways, I'm just bringing up the fact that that's all within your mind. The path of Sephiroth isn't a physical place.
Yeah.
It's like a mental place.
So we talked a little bit about Sephiroth in the last episode.
Circles.
Yeah, the 10 emanations of God and all that. This is how it's written in Perfect Works, in relation to the path of Sephiroth, right? It describes it like this. The phenomenon alteration engine Zohar, in the process of repeatedly selecting an event with a probability of 0, while the probability axis continues to incline, at the intersection at which the phenomenal axis and temporal axis fall parallel, an alternate reality is created. I can boil that down to, you kind of made this point that I thought was pretty legit last time, that the Zohar, or like the Deus system, was trying to find basically like this infinite power, right? Like the Zohar was built to be this infinite energy engine.
Yeah.
But it was doing these calculations, or like finding the path of Sephiroth.
Yes.
And this is just describing those types of processes, right?
Well, and this is the weirdest thing when you think about the path of Sephiroth, that your mind can go to these certain places, but there's a wall barring you from the top 3. No one's ever gone there, or it's like you can't go there. But the question is, well, what if we create artificial intelligence? And does the path of Sephiroth, the path to enlightenment, does that apply to an artificial intelligence as well?
Yes.
Well, if it does, then they're going to somehow break through that barrier just through sheer mechanical calculations and all that kind of stuff. They're slowly going to find a way to attain that enlightenment. But it's an artificial being. It's not a real being.
Right.
Well, real in the sense that you think of it. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a fascinating concept right there.
That's what the Zohar did.
Yes. And if Sephiroth is at all a possible thing, it's not humans that are going to get it there. It's AI that's going to get there, and that's how Xenogears happen. And that's what what AI does. It gets there, and then it pulls God back down.
Yeah.
I just think that's crazy.
So all that stuff that I read that sounds really, techie and stuff, the process of repeatedly selecting an event with a probability of 0, while the probability axis continues to incline, at the intersection of which the phenomenal axis and temporal axis fall parallel. That's all just describing the Zohar trying to find enlightenment.
Yes.
I think.
As an AI computer.
Right.
Well, biocomputer, right? But still.
So it says, an alternate reality is created. This is the link or road between the space at the higher dimension and our universe. So the Zohar discovered this pathway between the dimensions, which is the path of Sephiroth in Xenogears' world. The borderline between this universe and the higher dimension is the contact point, also called the path of Sephiroth, which leads to God's territory. This appears to those humans who see it as an image of water. For example, the scene of Faye's contact with the wave existence, that rippling surface that he's standing on.
And water represents just the, what would you call it? They called it the prima materia, right?
Yes.
Well, prima materia wouldn't technically have been water. It would be some spiritual matter. But the idea is that it's above and you can't describe it. But water is through the Bible and elsewhere is the start of God creating the universe. And prima materia means first materials that the universe is made out of, the first material. And it's usually represented as water, because that's the pure, chaotic, life-giving, essence of the beginning, basically.
And that's pretty much where life on Earth started, too.
Yeah. Life started with water.
In water.
Yes.
Right. So.
But the first thing God did was divide the waters.
Right.
Which is like, you're assuming water was already there, apparently, right? And so I feel like that's kind of subconsciously, that's what's going on here. You see the far reaches of God's realm of the universe as being a place with water.
Right. So that's what Krellian's talking about when he says the path of Sephiroth was connected.
Yeah.
No one can stop God from returning to his world now. So what have you come here for, Lacan? And Faye says, I came here to take the person I love back with me, so set Ellie free. The Deus system has been destroyed. It's all over now. So instead, I ask you, what are you hoping to achieve now? And this is where we start to see that Krellian's plan evolved as things became revealed to him. And he was responsible for some of those strange behavioral changes in what Deus was doing. That Citan noticed back when they were planning the attack on Merkava. Because Krellian didn't know everything. He didn't even know about the wave existence, right? And as he became aware of these things, his plans will change.
Do you remember the first time we went down to Zeboim, where Satan was like in his own mind, and he was like, why would they go through the trouble? And then ... and never went through with that. That would make sense that that Satan had some understanding of what the plan was going to be, more or less.
Yes.
And that Krellian was doing other things.
Yes.
Like he was going through way more trouble than he ought to have to do other things, and that was kind of confusing Citan even back then.
Because the plan had never involved nanotechnology before.
Yes.
Because they didn't question God's competence. The Gazel ministry
I love that.
didn't.
And that's the funny part with Krellian.
Knew it wasn't going to work.
And that's the funny part about him, where we see more it playing out in the scene, where he's like, I can become God.
Yeah.
Like I am going, and I feel like some of the adjustments that he was making were kind of inserting himself into the process, so that he could transcend with God,
could
right?
join with God.
Well, sure, join with God.
Because remember the scene where the Gazel talked about becoming God, and he rebuked them for that. He was like, you don't get to become
with
God.
God. Fair enough.
You become
That's a good
one
correction.
with God.
Yeah.
So that was his plan. But as he discovered the nature of God, slowly over time, even up to this point, now that he understands what the wave existence is, it's his definition of what it means to become one with God changes too.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. He says, the time when all things started, the place where all things were one, I am going there. So that's because Faye had asked him, what do you hope to achieve now? The time when all things started, the place where all things were one, I am going there.
That's prima materia stuff.
Yes.
But at the same time, a lot of Krellian's life is wanting to go back to his past.
Yes.
Yes, I connected that through this whole thing.
For this philosophical argument.
And it makes so much sense for his character to be so obsessed with the past and to just want nothing but to go back and restart everything.
Yeah.
Because he just can't let go of the past.
To go back to a time before grief.
Yeah.
He is trying to, he's the villain of the story. But as Ellie's going to say here a little later, Krellian actually loved people more than anything. He's not trying to kill everyone. That's how it appears.
He wants to end sorrow.
He wants to end sorrow by having everyone return back to God, where there is no individuality.
Right.
Everyone is part of the same wave world, as he now realizes, right?
Yeah.
This place of perfect peace and love and acceptance and warmth and goodness and a heaven-like place where there's no sorrow or grief anymore. And there's this cycle of people hurting each other and competing for resources. And if in order for one person to get ahead, someone has to lose, as he puts it.
Yeah.
And he thinks that the only way to get there is to go back. And he's obsessed with going back. Faye wants to go forward.
Right.
He has hope that humanity will overcome, its flaws and will grow and become better and all of these things. And so they're at this place of philosophical opposites, and they're
Yeah.
arguing these two things. And what I really love about this is when you really think about it, Krellian might not be wrong here. Faye might be the wrong one.
Right. Right.
And there's a whole discussion to be had around that, but before we even touch that, let's kind of just get through the dialogue. So Faye says, what place? And Krellian says, before the beginning of the universe, in the undulating waves of the higher dimension, all things were one. It was the waves spilling out from there that created this four-dimensional universe of ours.
See, I love this. I love this from a Takahashi and Sorya Saga standpoint. Like,
Yeah.
the idea of understanding that water is the basis for life in all creation, but the prima materia was something spiritual, but combining those two to use terminology like wave and spill, right?
Yes.
Because that doesn't make a ton of sense with what they're talking about. It's beyond our comprehension. But the imagery of a wave and
Yeah.
of something spilling out
Yes.
evokes the image of just water, which is the proper like representation of all of this. But it's so genius that they are going back beyond our understanding, are using that terminology to connect, to make it make sense with us
Yep.
for whatever they have in their mind. I think it's so smart. I love
It's
it.
super cool.
Yeah, cute.
It was the waves spilling out from there that created this four-dimensional universe of ours. Humankind and the souls of humankind that were born from there are merely leftovers of those spilled waves. So, and then Faye says, you're going back there? Is that what you desired? And Krellian says, Lacan, why such reluctance to become one with God? What attachment could you possibly have to this wretched old world? What meaning can be found in living out such a short existence, hurting others, hurting yourself, grinding one another down, only to inevitably die and return to dust? Why, everything we could ever desire is here. No need to be troubled by the need for love, for this place is filled with the love of God. And what's funny about this, he's going to say this in a second, I think Krellian is actually giving voice to the will of the wave existence here. I think the wave
I
existence...
wondered that, but it didn't seem right to me.
I believe that the wave existence wants to take humanity with it to the higher dimension.
Oh, and that's why things like that were happening.
Now, that's not said out... This is my interpretation. It's not
Interesting.
said outright.
Right.
But I think with what he says here about the will of the wave existence in a second, it starts to make sense. Like, why would the wave existence, who's been trapped here and has observed the four-dimensional universe being this way, and whose only desire is to get back to the higher dimension, and this universe was created with a spilling out of waves from that higher existence. And this is part of who we are, the wave existence.
Right.
Part of us got out and got into this world where there's all this strife and grief and pain
Let's
and
go
turmoil.
back, yeah.
Why not bring it back to us?
That I like that theory because I was confused at as soon as we free the wave existence, it's like, great, see you guys. I'm gonna go, but the only way I can go is to kill all of you. Sorry, bye.
Yeah.
And then the wave existence leaves and just kills everybody. But understanding it this way makes a lot more sense where it's like, no, the wave existence, death, whatever. I don't even, the fifth dimension, that's not even a thing, right?
Right.
They wouldn't quite understand the trivialness of the human,
Experience,
condition.
yeah.
But it's like, no, I'm freeing you guys, and you can come with me, right?
Yeah.
But the way humans perceive that is,
We're being
holy crap, a nuclear
freaking
bomb.
genocide.
It's gonna freaking kill everybody. We can't do that stuff.
Yeah.
And God's like, come on, guys, let's go.
Yeah,
That's so funny. So, because at first I was like, that ungrateful wave existence, what a jerk.
I know.
What a jerk. But there might be
I
something
think
more
the wave
benevolent there.
existence wanted to bring humanity.
That
with
is
it.
fascinating. I like that.
So Faye says, I have not lost hope in humans as much as you have, Krellian. Someday humankind will come to understand one another. I sincerely believe that. I think that is never going to happen.
I do too, because I immediately thought that, and I was like, I don't really even understand myself. I
Yeah.
don't understand my wife, who I'm very close to. I don't understand anybody. That's a heck of a thing for Faye to say.
I
That's
know.
fascinating.
I think we get trivially better in the ways that we can measure.
What is it? Better than we were yesterday, kind of
Yes.
thing. Yes, yes.
Like in the
yeah.
trivial ways that we can measure, we look at a civilization 1,000 years ago and go, yeah, we're much better
Yeah.
now
It's like they had
in terms of our human rights and,
Yeah.
and things like that than they were. But
Sure.
we still have a long way to go. And we're still incredibly tribal
Yes.
and very much do so much infighting and don't agree and cannot understand other people's perspectives and cannot unite on anything.
Yes.
It's a huge freaking problem,
And
and
so
it will always
subject-
be a huge problem because
Yeah.
in this existence we are trapped in the prism of a single perspective. I only know my own mind.
Yeah.
I cannot know your mind. I rely on you to explain it to me.
Right.
But we can't. We,
We
don't
can't
do a very
explain it.
good job.
Language is inadequate to
Language
explain
sucks.
thoughts. Yeah, it's horrible, and even worse, like text language
Yes.
is even worse. So places like Twitter or
it's terrible.
like or text messages just in general. It's like how often do you get misinterpreted there? It's like.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way everything's kind of reverting now because people don't talk as much anymore. It's a lot of it's through text. So it's like we're actually going backwards in our
Yes.
understanding of each other because
Yes.
we're doing the caveman scribbles on a wall instead of actually talking.
Speaking
but
face to face.
even talking is so inadequate. There's so much that you just can't convey and will never be able to convey.
You can't know someone's intention. You can try your hardest to understand it, or
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't do, they don't even try to do that. They just try to ascribe an intention
Yes,
so they
of
can
course.
dismiss.
Yes.
And that is a tribalistic way of thinking to
but
protect our ideology and never challenge it.
It protects your ideology, but it also keeps you from having to spend a lot of time working out everyone around you.
Yes.
Like that's an expensive process.
It's so taxing.
Like you have to be around someone for years, ask them tons of questions, know their whole life story that presumably they told you the exact truth on that they can even remember, which is not likely because
No.
they will have not remembered correctly a lot
Because
of
there's
things.
confirmation
Yes.
bias
and
and
so
all these
you can hear it
problems.
right from them and still not know them
Yep.
because what really happened was slightly different, but they have internalized it in a different way, but they can't articulate it and they don't remember it properly. Anyways, so many freaking reasons
And then
why
there's-
it's
there's-
literally but it's expensive to do. So
Yeah.
so the straw manning tendency that humans have isn't just a malicious thing. It's I don't have forever
energy,
here. Okay,
yeah.
like boil it down. Give me a 2-sentence. Give me a tweet about what this is, and I'll say if I like it or not. You know,
Yeah.
like I don't have time to get into everything.
Yeah. And I mean, because to understand a person, you'd have to not only understand their own perspective on their life,
Yeah.
you'd have to understand how mental illness worked into that.
Oh, exactly. The chemical
their
processes of the brain.
psychological development.
Yes.
Abuse that might have happened in their life, or trauma
Yeah.
that has caused them to have these other behavioral tendencies.
That they might not
Like-
even be aware of. Like a lot of Freudian psychoanalytic stuff was like, oh, when you were freaking born, you
Yeah.
had this crazy trauma of birth that has affected your life and caused all these things. And it's like, nobody remembers that, right?
Yeah.
You can't explain one person's birthing process versus the other and who was more traumatic and what happened at the beginning first days. The mother maybe could tell you a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
you'll never know that. But
Right.
apparently, according to certain psychoanalysts, that factors heavily into who you grow up into being.
Like I remember seeing, I don't remember where this was. It was pretty recently, like within the last couple months. There was some kind of thought experiment somebody was talking about where it's like it's not like out of the question that science will reach a place where some psychopath serial killer who's in prison or on death row or something like that for something they did can be given a drug that will fix that problem and they will be a normal human being.
And then prisons become
And then it's like,
obsolete.
is it actually
Yeah.
just to execute this person or for them to live a life sentence if they've
Or is
been
it
cured
reform?
of whatever the psychological damage
Yeah.
or the psychological, let's not call it damage, let's call it the makeup of their mind
Okay.
that caused them to have the tendencies that they have, the need to make other people suffer and to control people. Like if you could rearrange the chemical makeup of a person's mind so to where they would see themselves be horrified by what they were before, like then
That's an interesting
our
thought
whole
experiment.
judicial system
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
make sense
Yeah.
because.
You don't need that stuff.
And this is the things we can never understand why a person holds the beliefs that they have.
Right.
It's easy to boil it down and to say, "Oh, you're a terrible human being."
Yes.
It's so easy to do that
Yes.
because then I can justify
Then you
my
can write
ideology,
someone off, right? You
and I
can
can
write
say,
things
"See,
off."
I'm the good guy,"
Yeah.
and that's what a bad guy looks like.
Yes. And you don't have to confront your own shadow. You don't have to, and it's just like, just put it all off on them.
That
straw man and then go about your life.
Is not reality.
No, not even close. but you so that's a fascinating thought experiment right there. Because that pill would start to be used on lighter and lighter crimes.
Yeah.
Going up into, it basically would become eugenics, Minority Report stuff that would eventually go into pre-crime, and it would basically make everyone the same. At some point, everyone would take a pill the moment they're born. Okay, maybe a shot, I don't know. And they would get this in them because that eradicates all potential of any wrongdoing.
Like psychological standard.
Yes, but
of humanity.
But that standard will keep being raised until at some point we're all the same. Everyone's the same.
This ties into this philosophical debate,
a dystopian
which
thing.
Krellian is trying to get rid of all of that suffering and grief and trauma, which is caused by this discrepancy of people's psychology and their levels of being able to communicate and be understood or not, with joining with the wave existence where everyone is the same thing.
Yes. This is actually it's close to the central plot element of A Brave New World from Aldous Huxley, which is everyone takes that pill. It's like morphine type thing. It's an LSD kind of thing. It just makes you feel good all the time, and everyone's just always taking it, right? You've seen the movie Equilibrium, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing where everyone just, no one feels, everyone's like the same. It's just you're all robots and stuff, and that's cool. That's the way to live, right? And it's like, maybe an argument could be made that you ended suffering, fine, but these people aren't living, is the idea.
Yeah.
You're not living once you've eliminated any possibility for anybody to do anything other than what is considered the right thing to do, but then we're all robots.
Right.
Yeah,
and so then now we get down to what is the purpose of a perfected state, and the existence of a perfected state. We talk about God being omniscient and all-powerful and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And this kind of ties back to some discussion we had. We didn't do a podcast on the full game of Lost Odyssey, but we did one podcast on it.
Yeah.
And the idea of that game is
forever.
that when you live forever, like does such an existence at some point like start to feel meaningless?
Right.
Where you just keep living and it never ends, right? So I believe if you boil down...
But there's a pill that cures the feeling of meaninglessness.
Yes, but what I'm getting at is that growth comes from conflict.
Yes.
If there is no conflict,
good point.
if there is nothing challenging you, if there is no sorrow and there is no grief and there is no conflict whatsoever, there's not really any growth.
That's true. I mean, I agree with that. Actually,
you don't
on a fundamental level, I agree with
forward.
that. Yeah.
You don't challenge who you were and see a need to change and progress.
You just smoke weed and chill all day.
And just
you do
feel
nothing.
good all day and nothing
nothing
happens, right?
Yeah.
So this is something I've wondered about is would eternal life really even be something a person would want
desirable
after a certain amount of time passes?
Sure.
Once you have learned everything, once you know everything, once there is no longer a single conflict left to conquer, you know everything and you are all powerful, you can do anything.
Yes.
You've become God.
The idea is that you've then become God.
What on earth is there left to do? Would that existence not be hell in and of itself?
You know what? That's fascinating. Possibly there is no end for humanity but hell in different ways, and it's like you pick which one, right? But no, and then you're God. So now you go be God. Now you go create a universe, and maybe that's the interesting new thing. How many times do you have to do that before there's any point left in that anymore? You're right. At some point, you do run into should I create my 1000th universe? It's like, dude,
this is why I feel like the only way that eternal life could be meaningful is if there was never an end to some level of conflict, even for a God.
I agree
There's
with
got
that.
to be
I agree.
a conflict. There's got to be continual growth forever for it to stay meaningful and purposeful.
I totally agree with that, actually, even like on a religious level. Like, I agree with that. But in part, okay, so there's a fun quote from Dostoevsky that he says, if humans ever attained utopian state, the first thing that they would do is find a way to destroy it.
Yeah, because they need conflict.
Because that's what, so that something interesting will happen, right?
Notes from the Underground.
Yes, Notes from the Underground.
Is where he writes about that. Yeah.
And it's 100. It's so accurate. Like, Dostoevsky had a really good grasp on the crucial human condition, basically. So good. And he elaborates it it's hard to convey it in words, but he tells these stories that kind of give you that image.
Yeah.
But that is the central idea. Just so that something interesting will happen, people will destroy the perfection around them.
Yeah.
And that is who humans, basically, who humans are. Now, to one extent that humans find meaning that seems to perpetuate, although Lost Odyssey challenges this a bit, but that's because of the mortality. But it's through family, generally speaking, right? So if you can be God, but also have a family, and that family just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
But what makes family interesting? There's these different personalities and dynamics.
Watching things grow and challenge and overcome
seeing
challenges.
them overcome challenges, but also they challenge you because they think differently from you.
And then you grow through them.
You had 5 exact copies of yourself who acted exactly the same way as you. Family would not be interesting anymore.
Right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
right. If we all turn back into waves and we all exist as one consciousness that has no conflict whatsoever, what purpose is there in such a life? That's my question, not the game's question.
I love it though. I love it. It's a cool.
But it's probably.
It's an interesting question.
I apply that question to Faye. Faye is asking Krellian that.
Like then what?
More or less.
And Krellian's like, who cares then what? Things will be. There is no then what.
Yeah. So
you just be and don't be sad.
So Faye is basically saying, I have not lost hope in humans as much as you have. Krellian, someday humans will come to understand, or humankind will come to understand one another. I sincerely believe that. So he believes in the process, the growth process that comes through conflict and trauma and grief and sorrow. That is the path to walk for growth of the human race and of our kind, right?
That's fascinating.
It's necessary.
One more thing. Faye's not a human, though. Right?
This is important.
Okay.
This is an important thing to take into.
In fact, I get a lot of vibes of Nier actually here, because it's like at some point.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I shouldn't.
This is a very important point to bring up because there's a bit of a conflict in some of this because of this.
Okay.
So Krellian says, how can you be sure humans will never come to understand each other? I also believe that's true, but I also believe that's why life has purpose, right?
Right. So you agree with Krellian's statement, but he's taking it to a logic that does not make sense to you.
Yes.
So it's like your source is right, but your actions are betraying what your philosophy is.
I agree with the central idea. I disagree with the way you're going about addressing it.
Yes.
I agree with Faye with the way he's going about addressing it.
So you're kind of split. That's funny.
Anyways. He says, you said that she is the person you love, but can you say that you even truly understand each other? You brought that up.
I did, yes.
All humans do is place themselves at a comfortable distance from each other and call that mutual understanding, spiritual unity, or true love, but it is all lies. Man cannot associate with others without first deceiving themselves. That is the way they were created.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's true.
It is true. It is actually 100% true.
Faye says, but one being's ego can't determine everyone's fate. People have the right to choose their own destiny. That is why humans have free will. That's not necessarily a rebuttal of what Krellian just said.
No,
it's more a pivot onto the fact that I don't care if you're right. I still have to be able to choose my own fate.
Yeah, and I choose to give you the middle finger. Yeah.
And Krellian says, and what if that will itself was predetermined? And this is also the whole question of, is free will even
is
real?
Free will,
That's a whole separate topic that is fascinating.
That is very fascinating. Is it an illusion? But what is illusion but a thing that is consciously created? Anyways, it's crazy.
What then? Oh, what folly. Humans are just primitive life forms that have no such thing as free will. Mankind has merely been allowed to live in an imperfect state, as is, as will be. It is for this very reason, because humans have this wretched will or whatnot, that humans must experience sadness and loss. For someone to gain something means another must lose it. It is impossible to make humankind share limited things and affections. So I came to the conclusion that everything must be reverted back to where it all began, to go back to when all was one, waves and nothing else. It is not my human's ego, it is the will of the waves, the will of God. I think he is telling the truth when he says that. Yeah. I believe that this is actually, he's saying it because he is so grieved. He's coming from a place of brokenness and grief and sorrow, and so it can seem like he's saying this because he's just trying to escape his grief, and that's not a good reason.
Right.
But I do think he is right in saying this is the will of the wave existence. Because the wave existence doesn't understand the human experience like Faye and all the other humans do. He has a hard time understanding it because he just knows the fifth dimension and how great that is, and this is pretty messed up down here.
Yeah, this is screwy.
Come back.
I love how Krellian is submitting the idea that the creation of the universe was done entirely by accident.
Yes.
By using the word spill. Some of the waves spilled out, and it was a total accident.
Yes.
Like, clean it up, put it back in.
Yes.
Wipe it up with a towel and wring it out back in the bucket.
Yes.
I've never quite heard that explanation of somebody who would believe in God, but then also believe that this was a total accident and God is basically completely absent and doesn't even realize that some of his cup spilled,
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It's an interesting way to look at it.
The reason I love this scene so much is because there is such a strong point made on both sides. And there's basically nothing in storytelling I love more than philosophical debates like this, where it's impossible to make out who's right.
Yes. Dude, Dostoevsky.
And it's
that's
why
like Dostoevsky's whole thing.
And that's why I love this series.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
I've only read the first one.
Of all the weaknesses that may exist
Yeah.
in the Witcher stories, right, that anyone could point out, like, it's one of those things where all of that means nothing to me because he does this so well.
Yeah.
There's a moment, particularly in Blood of Elves. I'm not going to go into details on it. I'll probably cover this book either on my own channel or on the archive channel or something, because I want to start getting into more like book discussions. But where he does this, where there's one character who explains a thing that happened and the way that Ciri should feel about it. She's trying to persuade her.
Challenged.
And it's a dwarf character, and she's like, "Oh wow, okay." And I thought the same thing.
Right.
The dwarf got done explaining what happened, and I was like, "Yeah, that's solid.
Yeah,
that's a solid."
Try to get around that.
Solid explanation there.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Geralt comes in afterwards and explains it in this totally different way, and I'm just like blown away how the whole table can be flipped. And it's that kind of thing that I feel is happening here. Like, Krellian is making really great points. Faye is making really great points. It's hard to determine who's right when you really dig into it, right?
Right. Hey, you should read The Brothers Karamazov, by the way.
Totally should.
Yes, from Dostoevsky. That's probably the best exchange of fundamental viewpoints between two characters that you'll find anywhere.
It's stuff like this, when we go back to the very beginning of our podcast, episode 1, where I was talking about how people consider Xenogears' story to be on the same level as some of that, classic Russian literature.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of its use of allegory and its philosophical content.
It's cool.
This is why.
Yeah.
This is why. Okay, so Faye says, well, that's all right too. We don't have to be perfect. Actually, being imperfect makes mankind live by helping each other. This is the symbol of Nisan. The man and the woman with one wing that can fly, only coming together with the flame in between them. That whole symbol that we've built up and seen the whole game is what Faye is saying here.
Right.
Actually, being imperfect makes mankind live by helping each other. That's what being human is. That's mutual understanding. That's unity and love. I'm glad, no, I'm proud to be human. Ellie placed the future tomorrow in our hands based on our choice, and she is working to keep Deus far away from our planet. She's also trying to steal your heart, you who wants to journey all alone to be with God. Can't you understand Ellie's feelings? Do you have to become one with God before you're able to comprehend all of this? I understand. I know her feelings as if they were my own. Yes, she and I are one. We don't need God's help.
So the unity of mankind as opposed to the unity with God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about individual free will.
Right.
And people being given a choice and not being on some destiny laid out, some predestiny laid out by a God, and the choice being taken away from them. And the fact that we are imperfect beings means we rely on it. There's a value to that. There's a value to that existence, the same as the one that you're aspiring to.
Yes. I like this line here. He says, do you have to become one with God before you're able to comprehend all of this, right?
Yeah.
So I think what he's saying there is humans, in order for you, do you really have to go become one with God to understand humans? Because you're saying humans will never understand each other. You have to become God so that you'll understand everything, right? But then once you become God and then you understand humans, then you can't be human again.
You have to give up your humanity in order to achieve that.
But then you have to give up the godhood to become human. It's like you can't do both. But in order to understand humans, you'd have to be a god. But once you understand the value, or once you understand humans, to become human, I think Faye is saying, if you understand me, and if you really understand how I'm feeling, you'll know that why I want to stay here. But in order for you to really do that, you have to become God. But then you'll understand why you should be here. But too late. You're God now. You'd have to not be God to be here. And I think, and then do you have to become God before you can comprehend all of this? I feel like that's his criticism there. Yeah, it's a very good line. It's packed full of a lot of stuff there.
So Krellian then says, well then, prove it to me. Show me this power of humans. Show me this love that you say can make you independent of God. Now, becoming independent of God, right, is the key there. Because the final boss is Ouroboros, or Ouroboros. The Ouroboros ring that was found in the introns of Ellie's DNA.
Yeah.
This is what tied humanity to Deus. This was the genetic data left, or that was installed into Ellie by Deus, right? And that you have to actually fight Ouroboros and destroy it, which is the final form of Miang, actually.
It's a fascinating, was like a scorpionish looking thing?
It's like a serpent,
sort of. It's
mixed
like a
with like an angelic, like it's a winged serpent-like, with like a Miang head.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
But that's like the element of Miang, right? Like Miang being able to like awaken in any woman. It's this Ouroboros.
So she is the Ouroboros, which in some ways the Ouroboros is what binds humanity in and what separates chaos from order in some way, and it represents the cyclical process of chaos. But having her be the one that represents that, because she is the one that is constantly dying and being reborn, that is the Ouroboros symbol. And Miang is representative of that symbol by the fact that she is the one who constantly goes through this cycle over and over. And by killing Miang, we destroy not just the Ouroboros, but we destroy the cycle of the Ouroboros, which is the cycle of God, which is this keeps happening over and over and over, and it goes on forever. And instead, you get something along the lines of like a line or a segment, like you go straight from this point now. You're not constantly going in a circle, the way humans have been doing. That's really cool symbolism right there.
It's really cool.
It's really cool symbolism.
So here's the wiki of Xenogears. It says, Ouroboros is the final boss of Xenogears, taking place after defeating Deus and its counterparts. Despite being the final boss, she is extremely easy and it's almost impossible to lose against her.
Yes.
It's a fight that you can't lose, but the symbol is what's important. Krellian, wishing to know the true nature of humankind, puts Faith Fong Wong through one final test, this time against a form of Miang as the Ouroboros. In this form, she is half human and half serpent with angelic wings. Faye fights her in Xenogears. The music that plays is One Who Bears Fangs at God. I love that song, by the way. So once Ouroboros is beaten, Krellian finally understands this meaning of love between Faye and Ellie, as well as humanity itself. Something Sophia had tried to teach him long ago. Because remember, he misunderstood what she said.
Oh, yeah.
She said, you can't find God. I can't remember the direct quote. It's not outward. You have to go inward to find God. And he took that to mean what he set out to do
to go become God or be one.
He doesn't realize how wrong he was until after Faye defeats Ouroboros. Krellian then allows Faye and Ellie to return to their planet to live their lives with their friends. Although Krellian envies Faye and Ellie, he continues his path into the way of existence to walk with God. So
now, there's two thoughts here. One of them being that this is a tenet of worldwide storytelling, that when somebody has committed horrible acts, that they are not allowed to live, or they cannot continue in the story.
Yeah.
They have to die or whatever really happens to Krellian, I don't know. But they are not allowed to coexist with humans anymore. And this always, not always, this usually happens. Whenever you're watching a movie or reading a story, even if there is redemption for the character at the end, he still has to die.
Yes.
And I don't know, we've talked about this before, I don't know exactly why this is, given the Christianity emphasis on forgiveness and, repentance and things like that. But that is how it is. There is no forgiveness. There is no repentance. There is no.
There is forgiveness,
atonement.
but it only comes after a sacrifice.
You pay for your own sins. You have to pay for your own sins.
There's what's the word for that? It's not reprobation. What's the word? Anyways, there's a word for it. I forget what it is.
Reciprocity, something like that.
Something like
but
that.
the opposite of it. Yeah, so if somebody does something really bad, even if they become good later, it's like they have to die because they have to pay for their sins, because that's the story people want to hear and want to see unfold, is a story of justice. And the bad guy, or even if he becomes a good guy but did bad things, he still has to pay for what he did, right?
Yeah.
And you see this all over the place, but you see it a lot in like Korean television, for example, and in Hollywood movies and everywhere. So Krelian cannot come back to humanity. He can't.
Yeah.
It's like, I've done too much, I've gone too far, I can't come back, right?
Yeah.
And as much as the idea for us is, anyone can come back, there's always hope, you can always come back, what we're really telling ourselves deep in our subconscious is, once you've done certain things, you can't come back and like, bye.
Yeah.
You're gone, you're done. And movies and games and TV shows, they always end up having this kind of thing. Even with Krelian's realization, it's like, yeah, but I still have to leave because I was so bad.
Yeah, there's a couple elements to that. And I want to get to it in just 1 second because I want to read what Perfect Works says about the Ouroboros symbol. So it says, the Ouroboros is a snake that eats its own tail, the self born from its own self.
Yeah.
Before psychological awareness is in a state of hibernation, a gathering of unconscious will. What were you going to say?
Just the fact that it's not only that it eats itself, but that I mentioned it before,
Born
when the
from
snake is
itself.
born is when it sheds its skin.
Right.
It looks like it's coming out of its mouth. So it's not just a snake eating its own tail, it's also a snake exiting its own body.
Skin and continuing the process.
It's both, yeah.
Again, it cannot make judgments, unable to tell the difference between self-awareness and reality. This, a little bit to me, is kind of mirror stage, Lacan's mirror stage.
Yes.
Where a baby is like its actual true self until it learns to see its own reflection, and it starts to create an image.
Then it's like,
of itself.
That's me.
Right.
And it's like, that's the problem.
The real self was what was before the baby could see itself in its own reflection and start to build this ego idea, this image about what it is.
Yeah.
Which is all a persona, right? It's all a mask. It's not the real self. So kind of the same thing with Ouroboros, right? They're saying before psychological awareness, in a state of hibernation, a gathering of unconscious will. Again, it cannot make judgments, unable to tell the difference between self-awareness and reality, thus keeping it in a cocoon. With the growth of self, it develops from a non-conscious develops from non-consciousness to the need to escape the ring and live. Here it creates a world of its own consciousness. When able to firmly judge reality, it starts to emerge from the cocoon as it surpasses it to enter reality. In terms of Miang, this refers to the word expressing the idea of hampering mother in the process of deriving the child from the ring. Growth of self.
This refers to the word expressing the idea of a hampering mother in the process of deriving the child from the ring. So that's the idea of the devouring mother, or the...
Yeah, you've talked about this before.
I have, because this is the Oedipal situation, which is the mother that doesn't want the child to grow up.
Yes.
The mother that wants the child to stay in a circular process.
That is what Deus is.
Yes. Because they even mention it.
The mother god that Graf was talking about at the beginning of the story, wanting to kill Mother God. That's what Mother God is.
That makes
the
sense.
Ouroboros.
And that's why you have to escape the devouring mother. You have to escape the Oedipal situation. Satan, in our last playthrough, Satan explained how the mother brings her children back to her.
Yes.
Right? I can't remember where exactly that line was now, but it was at some point they were talking about it, and the mother wants to bring all of her children back to her, right? Mm-hmm. That is, through Lacan's psychoanalytic theory, that is incest, right?
Yeah.
So the mother wants to bring the children back in, so that is a form of incest, right? but that is essentially what it's referring to here. And so to break out, that is more or less what I'm talking about. So to break out of the ring is to go in one segment. It's a slight... So remember I mentioned how on maps, cartography will have either a circle surrounding the whole map back, 700 years ago, or they'll have little sea monsters that are essentially Ouroboros, which is where the infinity sign comes from. You'll have a little Ouroboros here. Over here there'll be monsters. You're off the edge of the map. There's nothing out here. It just extends to the vastness of infinity, right?
Yeah.
But the Ouroboros is what keeps you from going to the infinity, right? So the idea is the only way to get there is to break the cycle. But I still feel like it's a slight misunderstanding of what Ouroboros technically would mean for me.
They're twisting the concept into an original thing,
Which is cool,
right?
Which I can respect. Yeah,
Right.
It's not. Yeah, the Ouroboros is just the symbol of life and rebirth. It's not necessarily a symbol of imprisonment and entrapment.
Taking Ouroboros and combining it with Lacanian,
which is really cool. It's really cool, but it's a little. Some people might not love it.
But the point here is that in order to break free of the hampering or devouring mother, the mother god that has set humanity on this path to return back to itself, is to destroy Ouroboros. And that's why Ouroboros is the final boss.
Makes sense.
And you got to eradicate it from the introns as well, would be the thought, right? Like humanity breaks free of God's influence entirely.
Yeah.
And when we say God, we're not talking about the wave existence here. We're talking specifically about the mother god, Deus Ouroboros.
Right.
That's the influence they're trying to break away from.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what's going on with that. That's why Ouroboros is the final boss. Now.
Gosh, because at the very end of all this, it says episode 5, Xenogears,
Yes,
episode 5.
We're going to get into that in a second.
Apparently there's 6 episodes, but my gosh, how in the world do you put in that 6th episode after this,
All right.
Because it's really hopeful that humanity's going to go and flourish, and it's well, we'll see what happens.
So Faye and Ellie are back together again. And this is where Ellie says some of the stuff I was talking about. This is another dimension to Krellian that I think is misunderstood a little bit. Because I think a lot of people feel like, Krellian gets redemption in the end. He doesn't deserve it. Like, I don't think Krellian should get redemption.
That's that subconscious that I'm telling you about,
I don't buy into this redemption for Krellian. I'm going to talk about this. Because it's about understanding and tension, which we were talking about is almost impossible to do, right? So
yes, exactly.
What she says is, I came to understand after becoming one with Krellian. See, she became one with Krellian. This is why she gets it. This is why she knows he's not bad. His intentions were not bad, because she became one with him. I can't become one with another person. I can only listen to them try to explain themselves.
Is
right?
that the Vulcan mind meld is technically supposed to enable that communication to happen?
Exactly, where you actually feel.
Yeah.
You actually become that person, right?
Well, and that's actually where the word atonement, which has Christian connotations, means at one, right?
Yeah.
And meant, meaning mont, like the French word mont, meaning to make, or to become at one.
Yeah.
That is, in some ways, that's kind of, I feel like that's the idea they're getting at here.
Right. So she says, his heart was so full of sadness. That is why he desired for he and I to become one with God, because that would be the return to the beginning of everything. He told me you should be with him. That is what he said. You see, he already knew. Yes, he already knew how I felt, how you felt, but there was nothing we or he could do. He had no choice but to go forward, even if it meant he lost all feelings, lost everything that was human. For all humankind's sake, there was no going back. Even looking back held too many memories, and he would have just wanted to go back, even though he couldn't. She's really struggling to explain this, but I feel like I get what she's getting at, even though he couldn't. So please forgive him. Krellian loved people more than anyone else. That's the key line. Krellian was not doing this because he was bitter at humanity's state, because they betrayed him 500 years ago and all these things. He wanted to save humanity from that scumbag tendency that humans have of hurting each other.
So
he wanted everyone to be saved from this.
This is interesting. This is interesting. I didn't read it exactly the way that you did.
Yeah.
Krellian is, in his mind and possibly in reality, or well, in the game's reality, is a Christ figure in that sense,
Yes.
if you look at it that way.
Yes.
That's kind of crazy.
Yes.
I didn't see it that
That's
way.
what's
So if he's the
hard
Christ
to
figure, then as I bring
see.
up the idea of atonement, this is why Krellian doesn't die for 500 years. Just like Zephyr saying, oh, I have to live with the burdens of my decisions, and that's, I have to punish myself for this, Krellian, having that amount of sorrow and sadness that Ellie just described in his mind and heart, but instead of just going and dying or whatever else he could have done, he continues to live for 500 years with that immense sorrow in his heart, and he bears it. The idea being he bears it for everybody, because his goal is that through him, he believes, we can all become one with God and eliminate all suffering. And that would put him in the place of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Which
Yes, essentially.
I did not see until you just explained that. That's wild.
So he's doing this not because he's bitter or because he wants to punish somebody. I mean, he kind of did that a little bit by making the Shabbat people live to see the end. Like, he's like, your punishment is you have to, you get the life-extending treatments.
He was pretty bad.
But in his heart, as Ellie is confirming, a third person who joined with him and can understand him, he actually did love people more than anyone else. He was trying to save people. The best that he knew how, according to what he could understand in his perspective, he really believed this was good for humanity. So his intentions were good. He was just blinded by his trauma and sorrow.
Yes. And by his negation of free will, because this is why, even if, because there's so many, we don't need to get into the free will debate, but there are so many reasons to believe why it's possible humans may not have free will.
Yes.
None of them are practical. You have to act as though people have free will. You have to pretend that people have free will.
Sure.
Because otherwise, genocide is so there, right? If you're assuming people don't have free will, then people can't make the choices. It's fine if you make a choice for somebody else. What's the difference? It doesn't matter. They didn't have free will anyways, and neither do you. And so whatever happens is just a product of whatever the biological, inevitability was going to come to anyways. And so you do what you do, and they don't have any say in the matter, and that's fine because they're sheeple. And so it doesn't matter what you do. It just justifies anything. It justifies genocide. It justifies. So even if there may be a scientific basis for the possibility of not having free will, it's something you, as a human, when you're interacting with other humans, you have to ignore that.
Yeah.
You have to ignore that's even a possibility, because that can lead you to a place where Krellian ends up going to, which is like, it's for their own good, and
that's what he said, right? He was like, do you actually think you have free will? You actually believe that?
And that's part of why I'm bringing it up. He even mentions it himself. The absence of free will, I'm not saying it inevitably has to end in this way, although maybe I am saying that.
Remember, it's also what he said to the Gazel ministry as he unplugged him.
Oh,
He's like, you actually think
you have free will?
This was your free will that made you do this? You're all part of the program.
Yeah.
And he was unplugging him. That was all at the center of his
you can do
twisted.
Because as much as Ellie can be like, oh, he was a good person, and that's entirely possible. It's like, but only in his mind, where people don't have free will, can he possibly have been considered a good person.
Sure.
And that's fine, because it was his mind, and she was reading his mind, and that was his thought process. But that's where it goes. That's where it leads.
That's where it goes.
And I feel like that may even be the start of where Krellian is going here, was the absence of free will.
And so Faye says in response to that, I somehow knew it all along. I just knew he was really that kind of person. So he's kind of forgiving him, right? And then Ellie says, I'm so sorry, so please forgive me. I was wrong. I thought sacrificing myself in order to save others was the right thing to do. But my actions...
You could read this so sarcastically.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought sacrificing myself was the right... I'm sorry. I know. Okay.
She's not doing that, but
I know,
yes.
I'm being
That's
stupid.
funny. But my actions only brought sadness to all the people who I left behind. She's basically taking responsibility for Krellian.
Great.
I thought sacrificing myself as Sophia was the right thing to do, but it created Krellian.
I thought she was referring to sacrificing.
It's both.
Okay, it's both. Okay.
It's both, because she's like, I was about to do it again now.
Yes.
But the grief I would have left behind by doing so does this kind
would
of
have
thing.
created another
Krellian.
Oh, you're right. Oh, jeez.
Or another Lacan, or
possibly,
Graf, right?
except Faye goes with her this time
Yeah.
and dies with her. Now, who knows? Maybe somebody else would have secretly liked Ellie we didn't know about. Hammer may have. He's gone now. But the difference being that Faye actually went with Ellie this time, whereas before Lacan or Krellian couldn't go with her when she died, right?
So yeah, but as Sophia, she thought she was doing this noble thing, and that it was going to be this great thing in the end. It was a good thing to do.
And
But
she
it ended up
created
creating the two of the greatest villains of the world, Graf and Krellian,
Graf and Krellian.
as a direct result of her making that sacrifice.
This is even more evidence to humans who don't and will never understand each other.
Nope.
Because she's like, oh, I thought I was doing the right thing, but it was totally the wrong thing. I misread everything. And then Krellian at the same time, he's like, I'm doing the right thing. And it's like, dude, you're totally misreading everything. At least people think they have free will, so you can't do this.
Yep.
And then, anyways, everyone doesn't understand each other.
Nobody understands each other at all.
Which is very realistic.
Sadness gave birth to even more sadness. As long as I still live within you, my life is not just mine alone. And that was kind of what Lacan's thing was with her before, and Faye said the same thing to her.
And going
earlier.
through history, this actually brings up Cloud Atlas. Remember that movie?
Yep.
It's a similar kind of thing where there's different lives and different people, and we don't know how they're connected, but they're all connected, and through the different generations. And one of the lines in the trailer for it was it Halle Berry? Was she in that movie?
She is, yeah.
She is. Somebody was saying, our lives are not our own.
Yep.
Was one of like the lines there. And there's so much more that continues after you die and that built up to where you are now. And I think that's, the trailer says it beautifully. Look up the trailer for Cloud Atlas, 2010.
Go beyond that,
it's
because
beautiful.
I actually really like that movie.
I
on
haven't
a second
seen it
viewing.
since.
We saw it when it came out, and we didn't like it.
Just like Xenogears,
Yes.
right? Where it's like you play the game, you're like, what is this crap? And then you play it again. You know, I had a different understanding because I had you with me the whole time. But
I didn't know if I liked this game the first time I played it.
Right.
I got to the end and I was so frustrated. I didn't know what to think.
Yes,
Right?
probably same thing with Cloud Atlas. So
Now,
I should watch it
on
again.
a second playthrough of Xenogears, this is easily one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
It's not. It's so easily one of my favorite games of all time.
I'm glad that my first playthrough was one where it could be explained to me.
Right. But
yes, our lives are not our own.
go
They
watch
started a long
Cloud
time ago.
Atlas.
Yeah,
Having played this,
I should.
I feel like you'll like it better. I really liked it better the second time.
Nice. Well, it hammers this point home. Your lives aren't just your own.
Yeah.
Like Sophia, in some ways, Sophia didn't have the right to sacrifice herself.
Yeah.
It's what she wanted, but it's not what everyone wanted.
Yeah.
And so she didn't have the right to do it. It wasn't just her own thing. Now she did in many instances, but or in many
she's realizing now that's not
sense.
Necessarily
yes,
the right thing.
Exactly.
Now Faye responds to that, says, Ellie, this isn't wrong, or that isn't wrong. To sacrifice yourself for others is a noble thing. Even if it were to benefit yourself, it's no problem. That's kind of going back to their very earlier conversation on the frigate where she's like, I'm a self-sacrificing person. Sometimes that's a bit selfish, right?
Yeah.
It like fulfills me to be this way.
Yes.
That's what he's speaking to there, I think.
Yes.
There will always be a person healed, one or the other. Love gains its original shine only when there's an interrelationship between the giver and receiver. It is incomplete when one or the other is missing.
Ah, that makes sense then. So she was giving a gift that was not
received.
Mm-hmm. So she gave it and it just disappeared into the nothing.
Lacan and Graf didn't receive it.
That's interesting.
Yep. It is incomplete when one or the other is missing. The two are one. It was you, Ellie, who taught me that. I believe that is what it means to be human. I can now understand the true importance of it. I don't know if it's the right answer or not, but we have a lot of time to think about it. What Krellian himself was looking for all along, we will find the answer to it all ourselves. She says, thank you, Faye. And then they go running, and it's kind of falling apart.
Yeah, they're in like the desert or something, and everything's
Let's return to our planet.
Oh, well, we skipped a part.
Well, we're not there yet. I mean, she reaches out. Can you run? Okay, I'm not.
Oh, yes, okay, let's do that.
Let's turn to our planet, and then she says, that light, the point of contact with our world, can we make it in time? And he says, can you run? And then they start running, and then like the world.
We're in an anime sequence
yeah,
right
the
now,
floor
by the way.
kind of starts falling away.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh no, she falls down.
I love the abstract imagery of this.
Yeah.
I've seen this done several times, but I always love it. It's really really
awesome.
Cool. This is a better done abstract fifth dimension than Final Fantasy VIII did with its.
Oh, I agree
with its
100%.
Yeah, this was way more cohesive. It made
This
a lot
is
more sense.
light years better.
Yeah. Although this game is sweet.
It's
I'm
still
not
good.
knocking it.
Still
Good game.
good.
But this was
This
a
is
better,
just way better.
similar concept, just better executed.
Yeah. So then they find Krellian again. Right, they're kind of taken to the place where his soul is at. Krellian says, there's no time. This place is about to be destroyed. Now there's no more God. I think it means the path of Sephiroth is closing, right? And
Right.
the way of existence has gone through. And Krellian is at the precipice. Like, am I going to follow God, or am I going to go back and be a human? There is no more God. This is no longer their planet. This is your home planet that you are now standing on. And Faye says, Krellian, you're not going, are you? And he says, no. He turns around. Since that time, actually, they're actually speaking. This is voice acted, but so
Yes.
maybe I'll just put the voice acting on the screen. Since that time, I have stopped being human. I have committed so many sins that any attempt at living as a human is impossible. The only one that could have forgiven me is God.
See, and this was my point before.
Yes.
Where they had to put that in. Now,
Yeah.
I would love a story where Krellian does receive full redemption because there are no limits of the God's goodness, right?
There's so
but
much-
those stories don't exist.
There's so much going on here that I've actually incorporated into the novel that I've written. But
Oh,
that's
yeah.
one question I really wanted to explore.
Yeah.
Is taking a character who in our modern day society would be completely vilified. There is
Just
no
horrible.
redemption for this person.
Basically Hitler.
Can
right?
that person, not quite that far.
Okay,
but-
okay.
but
See,
still.
everyone's got a line, right? Everyone's got a line. Okay, Stalin.
But-
I hear you.
Going back to the hypothetical,
Yes,
right?
yes.
If we could give Hitler a drug that would undo his evilness,
I know.
could we let
That's-
him be part of civilization again?
People don't want to go there. They don't want
They
to think
don't
about
want
that.
to think about
Yes.
that. I want them to think about
I
that
do too,
in my
actually.
novel.
I do too. Well, that's interesting.
If a person who has done things that we consider irredeemable truly is able to see and change,
Yeah.
right? And they have completely changed themselves. Is that person ever worthy
Capable
of redemption?
of receiving
Can we
forgiveness.
ever forgive a person who has done the things we consider unforgivable?
Now, a very optimistic answer is yes. A very realistic answer is
Is
no.
probably not.
Probably not. There you go. That's more
and
realistic.
that's on us,
Yes.
not on the person who did the changing.
Exactly.
They've
exactly.
done everything they could
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
So is it a problem with us or is it a problem with them is the question.
That is the
Could
question.
Krellian actually come back and be accepted in society? Is that really a problem with Krellian, who has now seen the errors and has had the contact with the wave existence?
It doesn't
and
matter because this is a game for teenagers, and that is asking too much.
It's asking too much at
I
the
don't
end.
know who you're marketing your book at, but that is a tall ask
Yeah.
for adults, let alone
Yeah, kids.
young kids.
So, at least in his own view, it's like he's not gonna come back, right?
Yeah.
To him, he believes his only path to forgiveness is to make that kind of sacrifice, to
Right.
give up his humanity entirely, even though he still has in his heart some level of envy for the love that Faye and Ellie have together,
And some understanding.
obviously because he used to
Yeah.
love Sophia himself, right? He has that emptiness, and he envies that part of the human experience, but he's going to sacrifice that in recompense for the evil actions he did, even if he didn't have the intention of doing evil, right?
Right.
And that's probably something I should add. That now that I'm thinking about it, people are probably furiously typing in the comments. It doesn't matter if you don't intend to do evil; you can still be evil. Yes, I know that.
No, but
I know that.
prison is a place for rehab, and the
Yes.
idea is you fix it so that they won't do the crime again, right?
Yes.
That's the idea.
You can still do.
Krellian won't do this again.
You can still do great harm and great evil unintentionally. It doesn't
Yes.
excuse it
No.
because there wasn't the intention there. You still have to reconcile. You still have to seek forgiveness. You just have to change in order. You know, all those things are required, even though you didn't intend.
Yeah.
I understand that. Krellian is probably at the point where he would do that, the internal work, and he still feels like the only way he can be forgiven is to sacrifice his humanity, despite having lingering desires for it.
So
and to go return with God.
He can't forgive himself.
No.
Is the what that comes down to.
No.
And he's also right that the rest of humanity will not
Would
forgive
not
him
forgive
either.
him either.
But there's a Korean drama I watched a while back where I'm not going to say what it is, but because I have to give away the ending, so I shouldn't give away what it's called. You'll find it out if you ever watch it. There's a guy who's committing these horrible, horrible acts, right? He's awful. We find out at the very end he was being possessed by a demon the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And so the demon gets exorcised from him. He returns back to normal, but he's killed like 20 people.
Yeah.
And the cops still arrest him and put him in jail. And he's got a life sentence in prison. And they visit him in prison at the very end. And it's like, hey, are you doing all right? And he's like, no, it was me that let the darkness into my heart, so I'm still responsible for what happened. And I'm like, that's a cheesy, cop-out way of dealing with the fact that you know that this person there's no forgiveness and that the people wouldn't have liked it in your show if he was forgiven. That they would have said your show sucks because people like that shouldn't be forgiven because he killed people, right?
However,
But they do that in the show, and he's like okay with serving a life sentence now for things that he doesn't have a memory of doing, just because he was like, oh, I guess the darkness let the demon in to begin with. I don't know about that.
we must also consider
It wasn't him that did those things.
that Faye is also guilty
Faye has that exact same situation.
of a lot of near genocide. Like all of Elru was destroyed because he was id.
You're right, but we didn't see that.
We didn't see that,
But we did see some of it, though.
but he killed Rico's guys. We saw
You're right,
that.
actually. You're right.
We've seen Faye do a lot of atrocious things,
So it's actually a very similar situation there.
and he is able to forgive himself
That's a good
and
point.
be accepted
That's a good point.
despite all the bad things he did as id, which was a lot.
That's a good point. That's
so
actually a very good point.
Faye sort of is this.
That's true. So in a typical Western thing, Faye wouldn't have true forgiveness. And I don't even mean Western, because this is true all over the world. But they found other people worse than Faye that could definitely not be forgiven, and that enabled them the excuse to allow Faye to be forgiven. That would be maybe how
There
they
you
went
go.
about it there.
That's funny. Okay, so Faye responds to him by saying, "That's not true. I'm sure they would understand. There's still plenty of time to atone for your sins. You of all people can do that." And Krallian says, "Always the peacemaker, eh, Lacan? But regardless, I cannot go. It is something I have already decided. I'm going to walk with God, even if there is no place left for me upon my return." That's an interesting
he
line.
should have died 400 years ago anyways. So it's like,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing now is...
That last line is really interesting. Even if there's no place left for me upon my return,
Well-
can he come back after going to the fifth dimension? Can he come back to the fourth dimension
That's
again?
a good question, but I would have taken this to mean the return back to the essence, meaning all humanity came from the essence. He's returning to the essence. They may not want him.
Oh, maybe if they don't want him upon his
Yeah.
return there. I could see that.
Especially because literally, like, I hate to use this analogy, but imagine Jesus suffers the atonement on the cross and all that stuff, the Gethsemane, Golgotha, everything returns, and nobody follows him back. He's the only one. He's like, he did this crazy sacrifice for everybody,
And nobody accepted
and it was
it.
out of love, and it ends up being only him that rejoins with God. In some ways, you would say that was a failure, right?
That would just really suck.
God might honestly look at that and say that wasn't. I think you must have done something wrong, right? Because that didn't.
It's like, I feel embarrassed for you. Probably
idea
don't
being-
want to come back.
The idea being that God wouldn't accept that
Yeah.
offering. Like,
Sure.
this isn't sufficient. I believe that would be
That's
some
the
form of what Krallian
what
would
he's
be going
dealing
through.
with internally.
He's like, yeah, I just did this thing, and I tried to do this thing, and I completely failed. Are they even going to really want me?
Yeah.
Because basically all I ended
like
up
that.
doing is sacrificing a ton of things so that I myself could go be with God and no one else. And God's going to be like,
I like that.
I don't know if we want you here.
I
Okay.
like that a lot, actually. Krallian says, "I must go now." Faye says, "Krallian." Krallian says, "Actually, I envy you two." We were talking about this. They go back to Earth. So they come back in the Xenogears, and Seitan and the others are kind of on a cliff
Yes.
looking out like, oh, did they make it back?
Oh, the first time we've seen and heard these people in an anime
Yeah.
setting, as opposed to the voice acting, man.
Bart's voice really threw me off.
Me too. I was like, who is? Oh,
That's Bart?
He's being Malibu from what was that? American Gladiators?
Yeah.
Remember from the '90s? I feel like they just stereotyped him so hard in a way that I didn't realize in the Pixel version. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's Malibu. Oh my gosh, I was reading his character wrong this whole time.
What happened?
Waves from the explosion disrupted the ionosphere, making it impossible to get a visual. They were probably caught up in the explosion.
That's a lie! He'll come back. He promised us he would. I know it.
Well, dude, it's like this.
That's why I don't like that. That's why I
I
usually
know.
like games to not have voice acting
I
and
know.
just text.
Especially if he only says one sentence.
Yeah.
In the whole thing, he's voice acted in one sentence at the end. And it's like, maybe just don't have done that, because that threw
Yeah.
off my image. Same thing with Satan and a few others. It just
Yeah.
kind of threw off my whole image of who they were.
It's kind of funny.
I guess that was Billy who had the radio and was like, we're
I
picking
don't-
up something.
No, I don't. That wasn't Billy. That was just some
wasn't?
other person.
Oh, okay.
It was just some guy.
Well, I didn't recognize
has,
him,
like,
which
black
is
hair.
the point. I thought it
Yeah.
was just them with all the. I thought it was just the party people were there, but I guess there's some other
well,
dudes.
Choo
But I
Choo-
didn't recognize him. I
Choo Choo
recognized
just
Choo Choo.
sounds exactly like Pikachu, basically.
Choo. Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
mean-
And doesn't say words, only says choo.
Just says choo, 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 choo,
It's
choo.
like-
And it sounds like almost identical to Pikachu's
identical.
voice.
Yeah. Which Pokemon had come out.
Probably
when did the show?
2 or 3 years before that.
Yeah.
1996
Well, the game came
or
out in
95?
'96, but when did the show?
Oh, the anime? I don't know.
Was it 1 year later or was it 2?
Probably 1 or 2. I would think it would probably have been out at this time.
97 maybe?
It definitely was
98?
out by this time.
It was out, but I wonder, because these anime cutscenes would have been done
Oh, that's true.
previously.
Earlier? I don't know.
I don't know how much earlier, but
It's a good question.
anyways. Yeah, it was basically Pikachu, which would have come out like right around the exact time they made these anime, basically.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So Faye is with Ellie descending in the Xenogears. Citan runs up. Faye, what happened?
Oh no, we forgot one thing. Krellian has when Krellian leaves, he unfolds 2 wings.
Oh, yes, that's right.
2.
He has 2 wings.
And then he leaves.
Because he's become one with God.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, I can do things by myself. I don't need anyone else. I don't need humanity. But the moral of the idea of the one-winged angel was that you can't have 2 wings.
Yeah.
But Krellian became
Something more than human.
something more than human. So he became 2-winged. He doesn't need humanity anymore. He can go be with God.
But
If
Ellie
they'll
and
have
Faye
him.
still need each other.
They still need each other.
They all,
that would be the
in order
symbolism
for
there.
them to fly, they have to
Yes.
combine their wings.
Which, when combined, they have 2 wings too, but it's combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point. Anyways, they descend, and that's kind of the end of the game. And it plays a really beautiful song at the end. I really like the
Yeah.
ending credits music a lot.
It
This
was
the
good.
first time that they
was
had
good.
ever had a song
Oh, because this
for
was before
a
FF8.
Square game. Yeah.
Ah,
That they had
nice.
a song as their ending credits, like a singer came
Like
and
an
like
MP3.
performed. Yeah.
wonder
First time
who
that
that
they'd
was.
ever done that at Square.
Yeah, it was very well done. And then there's a little scene at the very end, which I thought was going to be a whole scene, but it wasn't. It was just, after the credits are done, it's just Faye. Is it just Faye and Ellie? Just standing there, looking out at just a valley of
Yeah.
water and grass, and then that's it. I thought there was going to be a thing happening, but there wasn't. In fact, you see Solaris crashed into the ground, and then you just see a lake, and all the mountains are flat, and that's it. I'm not sure if something's being shown in that cutscene because I saw it and was like, all right, what's going to happen now? And that was it. It was just one shot, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I missed some symbolism there.
So I'm going to look at some of the lyrics for this song, which is called Small Two Pieces, which is the song that plays in the credits. They're a little, it's a little hard, I feel, to pull meaning from the words are like a little too, what do you call it? What's the word for it? Where it's not specific enough to really
vague.
like, it's like a little too vague or artsy.
Right.
But there are some particular things in here that I think you can pick up on that would reflect some of the messages from the game. So the lyrics go, run through the cold of the night as passion burns in your heart, ready to fight, a knife held close by your side, like a proud wolf alone in the dark with eyes that watch the world, and my name like a shadow on the face of the moon. Broken mirror, a million shades of light, the old echo fades away. but just you and I can find the answer, and then we can run to the end of the world. We can run to the end of the world. Cold fire clenched to my heart in the blue of the night. Torn by this pain, I paint your name in sound. And the girl of the dawn, with eyes of blue and angel wings, the songs of the season are her only crown. Broken mirror, a million shades of light. The old echo fades away, but just you and I can find the answer, and then we can run to the end of the world. We can run to the end of the world. I won't read that one, but there's one more verse. We met in the mist of morning and parted deep in the night, broken sword and shield and tears that never fall, but run through the heart, washed away by the darkest water. The world is peaceful and still. So I'd like to see, because I read that and it's like, I can see the broken mirror imagery and that, and the two people needing each other, kind of anima stuff. Like I can see some of that in there. Yeah. But I wonder if there are other people who have interpretations of some of these lyrics that can draw deeper meaning out of it. For me, it felt a little too vague to kind of directly piece it with like some of the messages in Xenogears, but I'd like to see what other people think about those lyrics and see if people can give some good interpretations. Otherwise, I believe that we have come to the end of summarizing this game. Oh, I was going to talk about Big Joe. That's the last thing to do.
Oh, good. Yes, his little story.
Just some background on Big Joe that you get from those books if you find him down in the Zeboim ruins. This will tie it up for the podcast here. Big Joe was a revered hero to the people during the Zeboim era. Before his 30th birthday, Big Joe wanted to extend his life by preserving his body. He was put into cold sleep, but scientists made a mistake and accidentally froze him too fast. Their thawing techniques could not revive him successfully. The people of Zeboim were left saddened at the loss of their hero. When the Zeboim civilization died out, Big Joe was left in a frozen slumber. His refrigeration container changed locations many times, receiving damage along the way, and began to deteriorate. 4,000 years later, when the Ethos were excavating the Zeboim ruins, they found Joe's cryonic reactor. Thinking it was trash, they threw it to the sea. The reactor floated on the waves, finally reaching the coast of the island in Akavi region, where Billy's orphanage was. He was discovered by the Davy boys, who lived there, and they released the lock. The sand's heat naturally awakened Joe, and he swam to Ignis. Swam from Akavi to Ignis?
Oh my gosh.
Joe began to wander around, hoping to restore his former glory. So, yeah, Big Joe comes from the Zeboim era. He was cryonically encased, and he woke up after the Ethos discovered his pod or whatever. And he was like a hero at that time. So, there you go.
Fascinating.
All right, guys. That's the end of our summary of Xenogears.
This is my last note here. What a journey.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate finishing games. I hate it. It's the worst. It is
there is
emotional.
A sad feeling.
It feels sad. It's like it's over. It's done. You know, and you never get the experience of a first playthrough of a game again.
Yeah.
So it's like you lose. I'm losing something.
Here's what's cool is
it's
all
slipping
these
through
people.
My fingers.
I actually loved this about this reaction from the audience. So many people, I would say their favorite part of this whole 20-episode podcast was watching you experience it the first time.
Oh, really?
Because they can never do it again.
Right, that's true.
Now
I guess that's
you
closest
are
you're
also
get.
in their seat.
I'm initiated, and I'm going to have to go find someone else.
You have to find if it's your wife or, like I'm going to play this probably pretty soon with Chrissy. It'll be her first playthrough of the game.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like I loved watching you play through it the first time. Like just introduce it to new people, right? That's kind of like the best way.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad I could be of use.
It was a lot of fun. But we're not quite done yet.
Okay.
Read Perfect Works for next week. We're going to have Pat Holloman on, who is like a Xenogears expert. Like a
Does he have a degree?
Basically, he has a degree in Xenogears. And we'll invite the Retrograde Amnesia guys back on too.
Cool.
We'll answer questions from the audience. We'll revisit things that people suggest, like, hey, what did you think about this? You said this at this time. Do you still feel that way? and we'll talk about Perfect Work stuff.
Well, good.
And that will bring a close to the podcast. But man, I really thoroughly enjoyed this playthrough.
Oh my gosh.
Thoroughly.
Yeah, me too.
You
You guys vote for good games.
They sure do. And next week we will reveal the winner for the next podcast.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that. Till then, thanks everybody. We'll see you again next week. Peace out.